Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Black Magic. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present what if Harry bonded with the Hogwarts wards and could control every stone staircase and portrait in the castle. If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go. Chapter 1, The Castle Awakens. Run, Harry. Ron's urgent whisper propelled Harry forward as Filch's lantern cast menacing shadows around the corner. They'd stayed in the room of requirement too late practicing defensive spells, and now the caretaker's shuffling footsteps echoed through the corridor, Mrs. Norris's soft meows growing closer. Harry sprinted down the darkened hallway, Ron's footfalls pounding behind him. With Umbridge's latest educational decree threatening expulsion for unauthorized gatherings, getting caught after curfew meant more than just detention. Split up, Harry hissed, gesturing toward a branching corridor. Meet back at the common room. Ron nodded and veered left while Harry darted right, his heart hammering against his ribs. The corridor ahead ended in a solid wall, no doors, no alcoves, nowhere to hide. Filch's wheezing breath grew louder behind him. Bloody hell, Harry muttered, pressing his palm against the cold stone. I need somewhere to go. Please. The wall shimmered beneath his fingertips. A strange warmth spread up his arm, tingling like static electricity. The stone rippled like water, and Harry stumbled forward as a passage materialized where solid wall had been seconds before. Without hesitation, he ducked inside, the opening ceiling shut behind him. Harry froze in the darkness, palms still pressed against the interior wall. The stone felt warm, almost alive beneath his touch. His heartbeat slowed as he realized Filch couldn't follow, but something else was happening. Energy pulsed through the stonework, flowing into him like water finding a new channel. The sensation intensified until his whole body hummed with it, magic far older and wilder than anything he'd felt before. What the? Harry gasped as images flashed through his mind, corridors he'd never seen, rooms hidden for centuries, the foundations of Hogwarts stretching deep into the earth. For a moment, he felt the castle's vastness as if it were an extension of his own body. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sensation receded, leaving Harry dizzy and disoriented in the darkness. A soft golden glow illuminated the passage ahead, though no torch or lantern was visible. The light seemed to emanate from the stones themselves, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Harry followed the glowing path, each step steadier than the last. The passage curved and twisted before opening into a familiar corridor near Gryffindor Tower. As he stepped through, the stones whispered against his consciousness, not with words, but with a sensation of recognition. That was mental, Harry murmured, glancing back at the wall that had transformed to help him. He pressed his palm against it again. Thanks. The stone warmed briefly beneath his touch before cooling to normal. Harry shook his head, convinced he'd imagined the response. He hurried toward the portrait hole, the fat lady snoring gently in her frame. Mimbulus Mimbletonia, he said, but before the words fully left his mouth, the portrait swung open without the fat lady waking. Harry stepped through, puzzled. The common room was nearly empty, just Hermione curled in an armchair with a massive book and Ron pacing nervously by the fireplace. Harry! Ron rushed over. How'd you get away? Filch was right behind you. The castle. Harry started, then faltered. How could he explain what had happened? A passage appeared. I've never seen it before. Hermione looked up sharply. What do you mean, appeared? Exactly that. There was a wall, then there wasn't. Harry dropped into a chair, running his fingers through his hair. And that's not all. Something happened to me in there. He described the strange connection he'd felt, the energy flowing through him, the images of Hogwarts from impossible perspectives. As he spoke, the firelight seemed to brighten and dim in rhythm with his words. Harry, that sounds like. Hermione bit her lip. Well, I don't know what it sounds like. I've never read about anything like that. Maybe you hallucinated? Ron suggested. Fred and George mentioned some weird fungi growing in the abandoned corridors. Breathe too much and you start seeing pink elephants doing the tango. It wasn't hallucination, Harry insisted. It felt real. Like the castle was. I dunno, talking to me. Hermione closed her book. Hogwarts is the most magical building in Britain. After 1,000 years of housing wizards, who knows what kind of sentience it might have developed. Still, I've never heard of it interacting directly with a student. Well, it interacted with me, Harry said, remembering the warmth beneath his palm. And the portrait hole opened before I finished the password. Coincidence, Ron yawned. Fascinating magical mystery and all that, but I'm knackered. Coming up. Harry nodded, though sleep seemed impossible with the memory of magic thrumming through his veins. As they headed toward the stairs, he glanced back at the common room. For a split second, he could swear he saw the stones of the wall ripple, like someone waving goodbye. Breakfast the next morning brought another of Umbridge's educational decrees, this one restricting student movement between classes to ministry-approved pathways only. She's mental, Ron said through a mouthful of toast, glaring at the pink-framed proclamation. What's next? Approved breathing patterns. Harry barely heard him. Since waking, he'd been hyper-aware of Hogwarts around him. The flagstones beneath his feet felt different, somehow alive. The ceiling beams creaked with purpose rather than age, and the windows seemed to brighten whenever he looked through them. Harry. Hermione waved a hand before his face. You haven't touched your breakfast. Sorry, he muttered, forcing himself to focus. Didn't sleep much. Thinking about that weird passage? Ron asked. Before Harry could answer, owls flooded the great hall with the morning mail. A large tawny owl dropped a copy of the Daily Prophet in front of Hermione, who quickly unfolded it. Oh no, she breathed, spreading the paper flat. Listen to this, Ministry to evaluate Hogwarts security, following reports of unauthorized magical signatures within Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the Ministry has dispatched a team of experts to assess potential vulnerabilities in the ancient structure. What does that mean, unauthorized magical signatures? Ron frowned. Harry's stomach clenched. It means they detected something strange happening in the castle. Last night, when He lowered his voice. When the wall opened for me. That's ridiculous, Hermione whispered. Hogwarts is full of magic. How could they possibly distinguish one new magical event? I dunno, but, Harry stopped as a portrait on the nearby wall, an elderly wizard with a pointed beard, winked at him deliberately. Did you see that? Ron and Hermione turned. The portrait was now snoring softly, looking perfectly normal. See what? Ron asked. The portrait winked at me, Harry insisted. Hermione frowned. Portraits wink all the time, Harry. Not like that. Like it was trying to tell me something. Throughout the day, the strange occurrences multiplied. In charms, the feather Harry was supposed to levitate rose before he cast the spell. During transfiguration, his desk shifted slightly when McGonagall criticized his wand grip, as if adjusting to help him. And between classes, he noticed portraits following his progress down corridors, whispering to each other as he passed. By the time Defense Against the Dark Arts arrived, now a practical joke of a class under Umbridge, Harry was convinced he wasn't imagining things. Hogwarts was responding to him. Wands away, Umbridge simpered as they entered. Today we'll be continuing our theoretical discussion of counterjinxes as outlined in Chapter 12. The class groaned collectively. Harry opened his textbook, fighting the familiar surge of frustration. As Umbridge began her patronizing lecture, he absent-mindedly traced patterns on his desk with his finger. The wood grain seemed to shift beneath his touch, swirling to match his movements. Fascinated, Harry pressed his palm flat against the surface. Like the wall the previous night, the desk warmed beneath his hand. A pulse of energy traveled up his arm, and suddenly he could feel the entire classroom around him, the chairs, the walls, the ceiling, all connected, all part of Hogwarts. On impulse, Harry closed his eyes and focused on the chandelier above Umbridge's desk. Swing, he thought. Just a little. The chandelier remained still. Harry concentrated harder, trying to channel the strange connection he felt. Please swing, he thought, more deliberately. A soft creaking sound made him open his eyes. The chandelier swayed gently, casting dancing shadows across Umbridge's pink cardigan. She looked up, startled. Drafty in here, she remarked, pointing her wand at the windows to ensure they were sealed. But the chandelier continued its gentle motion. Other students noticed now, watching its hypnotic swing instead of their textbooks. Umbridge's face tightened with annoyance. As I was saying before this distraction, she continued, theoretical knowledge provides a sufficient foundation. The chandelier swung wider. A crystal pendant broke free, falling with perfect precision onto Umbridge's cup of tea, splashing pink-tinted liquid across her notes. Goodness, she exclaimed, jumping back. What is the meaning of? The classroom door swung open by itself. Umbridge stared at it, her face reddening. Who did that? Which one of you is responsible for these disruptions? No one moved. Harry kept his expression neutral, heart racing. He hadn't intended the door to open, had he done that unconsciously? Umbridge's eyes narrowed, scanning the room before settling on Harry. Mr. Potter. Why am I not surprised to find your attention wandering? Perhaps you'd like to explain these disturbances. I don't know what you mean, Professor, Harry replied, working to keep his voice steady. Maybe Peeves is playing tricks. Peeves is not permitted in my classroom, she snapped. 5 points from Gryffindor for your impertinence. As she turned back to the blackboard, Harry noticed something extraordinary. The stone wall behind Umbridge was rippling, like water disturbed by a thrown pebble. He blinked, and the ripples formed a distinct pattern, a lightning bolt, identical to his scar. No one else seemed to notice. The stones smoothed back to normal as Umbridge continued her lecture, but Harry couldn't focus on another word. The castle had marked him, shown him a sign only he could see. When class finally ended, Harry lingered, touching the wall where the lightning bolt had appeared. The stone felt warm, responsive. Are you trying to communicate with me? He whispered. No visible response came, but a subtle change in the air, like a listening silence, convinced Harry that something ancient and powerful had awakened in Hogwarts. And somehow, impossibly, it had chosen him. You did what? Hermione hissed later that evening as they huddled in a corner of the library. Harry, that was incredibly reckless. I didn't mean to, Harry defended himself. I was just curious if I could do it. I never expected the chandelier to actually move. But it did move, Ron said, looking both impressed and concerned. And the door opened by itself. And the wall showed you a lightning bolt. Mate, you're controlling Hogwarts. Not controlling, Harry corrected. It's more like, asking. The castle chooses whether to respond. Hermione's forehead creased with worry. This is unprecedented, Harry. If the Ministry finds out, if Umbridge suspects, I know, Harry sighed. I need to be more careful. We need to understand what's happening, Hermione said, already pulling books from a nearby shelf. There must be something in Hogwarts, a history about the castle's magic. For the next hour, they pored over ancient texts about magical architecture and the founding of Hogwarts. Most accounts described the castle as an extraordinary magical achievement but said nothing about it interacting with students. Here's something, Hermione finally said, hunched over a dusty tome titled Architectural Animism in Medieval Magical Structures. Listen, certain magical buildings of sufficient age and magical saturation may develop a form of sentience, particularly when constructed using methods incorporating binding spells and intention-based enchantments. In rare cases, such structures have been known to form temporary bonds with magically compatible individuals, though such occurrences were more common in the era before standardized wand use. That sounds like what's happening to me, Harry said. But why now? I've been at Hogwarts for 5 years. Maybe it has something to do with your magical development, Hermione suggested. Or perhaps the castle is responding to a threat. Like Umbridge, Ron muttered. The castle hates her as much as we do. Hermione continued reading. These bonds typically manifest during periods of significant magical disturbance or when the structure itself is threatened. Historical accounts reference individuals known as edifice guardians or structure wardens who served as living extensions of magical buildings' protective enchantments. Structure wardens, Harry repeated. Castle wardens. So Hogwarts chose you as its guardian? Ron looked skeptical. Bit dramatic, isn't it? Even for you, Harry. I don't know what it chose me for, Harry admitted. But I can feel it getting stronger. The connection. Hermione closed the book carefully. We need more specific information. This is too general. We should look for records about Hogwarts specifically, founding documents, perhaps. Where would those be kept? Ron asked. Restricted section. Maybe, Hermione bit her lip. But I doubt Madame Pants would give us permission, and with Umbridge watching everything. I might know another way, Harry said slowly. If the castle is trying to communicate with me, maybe it can show me what I need to know. That night, after his roommates had fallen asleep, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, curtains drawn. He placed his palms flat on the floor beside the bed, closing his eyes and focusing on the sensation he'd felt the night before, the ancient magic of Hogwarts flowing through stone and wood. I need to understand, he whispered. Show me what's happening. Why me? What do you want? For several long minutes, nothing happened. Harry was about to give up when the floor beneath his hands warmed. Energy tingled up his arms, and behind his closed eyelids, he saw a glowing pathway illuminating the darkened castle. Harry opened his eyes. The vision remained, a golden trail visible only to him, leading out of the dormitory. Without hesitation, he grabbed his invisibility cloak and the Marauder's map, then followed the shimmering path down the spiral staircase. The common room was empty, the fire reduced to glowing embers. The portrait hole swung open silently as he approached. Out late again, Mr. Potter, the fat lady whispered, surprising him. She was usually asleep at this hour. You can see me? Harry asked, the invisibility cloak wrapped securely around him. She chuckled softly. Not exactly. But the castle knows where you are, and so do we. She gestured to the other portraits lining the corridor, many of whom were awake and watching. The portraits are part of Hogwarts too, Harry realized. We're its eyes and ears, the fat lady confirmed. And for the first time in centuries, Hogwarts has found a voice. Through you. Before Harry could ask more questions, she shooed him forward. Go on, then. It's waiting for you. The golden path led Harry through corridors he recognized but revealed hidden alcoves and passages he'd never noticed before, even with the Marauder's map. He checked the map occasionally, avoiding Filch and the patrolling prefects with ease, almost as if the castle itself was timing his movements to avoid detection. The path descended steadily, taking him deep into the castle's lower levels, past the kitchens and dungeon classrooms to areas he'd never explored. Finally, he reached a small, unremarkable door set into a stone wall. Unlike the grand entrances to Hogwarts' notable chambers, this door was simple wood with iron banding, devoid of ornamentation. The golden path ended here. Harry reached for the handle, but the door swung open before he touched it. Inside was a circular room with a domed ceiling, empty except for a stone pedestal in the center. Atop the pedestal sat an ancient book bound in leather so dark it seemed to absorb the light. As Harry approached, torches ignited around the room's perimeter, casting warm light over the chamber. The walls were lined with carved symbols, runes, perhaps, or some older form of magical writing. They pulsed gently with the same golden light that had guided him here. The book on the pedestal seemed to call to him. Harry reached out, hesitating just before touching it. Is this what you wanted to show me? The runes on the walls brightened in response. Taking that as confirmation, Harry carefully opened the book. Its pages were parchment, yellowed with age but perfectly preserved. The text was handwritten in 4 distinctly different styles, alternating throughout the book. Harry immediately recognized what he was seeing, the personal notes of Hogwarts' 4 founders. The Founders' Codex, he breathed. The book seemed to respond to his voice, pages turning by themselves until settling on a section written in flowing script that Harry somehow knew belonged to Rowena Ravenclaw. The binding of Hogwarts is complete. We 4 have woven our magic into every stone, every beam, every foundation. The castle lives, in its way, not as we live, but with purpose and protection embedded in its very essence. In times of greatest need, Hogwarts may seek a warden, one whose magic resonates with the castle's heart. Such bonds are rare and precious, forming only when the school faces threats from within or without. Harry continued reading, learning how the founders had built more than just a school. They had created a semi-sentient magical entity designed to protect and nurture generations of young witches and wizards. The Codex described previous wardens throughout history, students or teachers who had temporarily bonded with Hogwarts during periods of danger, wielding the castle itself as both shield and weapon. The last recorded warden had served during Grindelwald's rise to power, when dark wizards had attempted to seize Hogwarts as a strategic stronghold. After that, the Codex pages remained blank, until today. At the bottom of the final written page, fresh ink appeared as Harry watched: Harry James Potter, Warden of Hogwarts. Bonding initiated October 15, 1995. Harry stared at his name, written in script that matched none of the founders. The castle itself had added his name to its history. Why now? Harry asked aloud. What threat are you sensing? The pages turned again, revealing a section written in sharp, angular handwriting: Salazar Slytherins, the heart of Hogwarts lies not in its walls or towers, but in the convergence of ley lines beneath the foundation stones. Any who control these nexus points control the castle entire. Guard these well, future wardens, for they are both Hogwarts' greatest strength and most vulnerable weakness. As Harry read these words, a new image formed in his mind: a complex network of magical energy flowing beneath Hogwarts, with 7 critical junctions where the power concentrated. One of these nodes pulsed with angry red light in his vision, disturbed by some external force. Someone's tampering with the wards, Harry realized. With you. The vision faded, leaving Harry alone with the Codex. He gently closed the book, mind racing with implications. Hogwarts had chosen him as its warden because someone was attacking it, not physically, but magically, targeting the ancient protective spells woven into its very foundation. I'll help you, Harry promised, laying his hand on the book's cover. But I need to understand how. The Codex warmed beneath his palm, then opened again to a different section. This page contained detailed illustrations of hand movements and incantations, exercises designed to strengthen a warden's connection to the castle. Harry spent the next hour practicing these techniques, feeling his awareness of Hogwarts expanding with each repetition. By the time he finally closed the Codex again, he could sense the castle around him more clearly than ever, not just the room he occupied, but corridors and chambers throughout the structure, the movement of sleeping students in their dormitories, even Peeves bouncing around the trophy room 3 floors above. The golden path reappeared as Harry left the chamber, guiding him safely back to Gryffindor Tower. This time, he noticed how the castle subtly aided his journey, staircases shifting to optimal positions before he reached them, suits of armor turning to block corridors where Filch was patrolling, portraits swinging open to reveal shortcuts. By the time Harry slipped back into his bed, dawn was approaching. Despite the lack of sleep, he felt energized, his mind buzzing with new knowledge and possibilities. Hogwarts had chosen him, and now he understood why. Something, or someone, threatened the castle, and as its warden, Harry was uniquely positioned to defend it. But first, he needed to tell Ron and Hermione everything he'd learned. A castle warden? Hermione repeated, eyes wide with fascination. The 3 friends had found a secluded spot by the lake during their free period, away from curious ears. Harry, This is extraordinary magic. Bonding with an entire magical structure. It's practically unheard of in modern times. The codex mentioned others, Harry said. But the last one was during Grindelwald's time. Makes sense, Ron nodded. You know who never attacked Hogwarts directly in the last war. But why Harry? Hermione mused. I mean, no offense, Harry, but why would the castle choose you specifically? Harry shrugged. Maybe because of my connection to all four houses. The Sorting Hat wanted to put me in Slytherin, I pulled Gryffindor's sword from it, I've got my mum's Ravenclaw tendencies according to Flitwick, and... He paused. I dunno about Hufflepuff. You're loyal to your friends, Ron offered. Or maybe it's simpler than that, Hermione suggested. Maybe Hogwarts chose you because you've always seen it as home, more than any other place. Harry nodded, surprisingly touched by her insight. Yeah. Maybe. So what now? Ron asked. You said someone's tampering with the castle's magic. One of the ward nodes is disturbed, Harry confirmed. I could see it. I think I could find it too, now that I know what to look for. That should be our priority, Hermione said firmly. If someone's interfering with Hogwarts protections, it could endanger everyone. I need to practice first, Harry said. The codex showed me exercises to strengthen the bond. I'm going to try them tonight. We should tell Dumbledore, Hermione insisted. Harry hesitated. He's barely at the school anymore. And with Umbridge reading all the mail, sending him an owl is too risky. McGonagall, then, she pressed. Not yet, Harry decided. Let me get a better handle on this first, figure out what's really happening. If we go to the professors now, they might just think I'm making it up. Hermione looked unconvinced but didn't argue further. That afternoon, more ministry officials arrived at Hogwarts, joining Umbridge for what she called a comprehensive security assessment. Students whispered nervously as strangers in official-looking robes measured doorways, examined portraits, and cast detection spells in corridors. Looking for structural weaknesses, a short, pompous wizard explained when Katie Bell asked what they were doing. Nothing to worry about, just standard procedure. But Harry felt the castle's unease like a physical pressure. The stones seemed to vibrate with tension whenever ministry officials approached, and portraits deliberately misled them, sending them down incorrect corridors or toward staircases that immediately changed direction. During Transfiguration, Harry noticed McGonagall watching him more closely than usual. When class ended, she called him to her desk. Potter, is everything all right? She asked, her voice low. You seem distracted today. Harry hesitated. Should he tell her about his connection with Hogwarts? But before he could decide, the classroom door opened, and Umbridge entered with two ministry wizards. Ah, Professor McGonagall, she simpered. These gentlemen need to examine your classroom for potential security enhancements. McGonagall's nostrils flared. My classroom is perfectly secure, Dolores. Nevertheless, the ministry has authorized a complete assessment. Umbridge's gaze shifted to Harry. Mr. Potter. Always in the middle of things, aren't you? You may go. Harry gathered his books, catching McGonagall's eye. She gave him a subtle nod that clearly meant, we'll talk later. As he left, he noticed one of the ministry wizards casting detection spells near the windows, spells that seemed focused on identifying magical signatures rather than structural weaknesses. They weren't looking for problems with the castle. They were looking for him. That night, Harry returned to the chamber of the Founder's Codex, following the golden path that now appeared automatically whenever he focused on his connection to Hogwarts. This time, Ron and Hermione accompanied him under the invisibility cloak, moving awkwardly to stay covered. This is incredible, Hermione whispered as they entered the circular chamber. I've never read about this room in any book about Hogwarts. That's because it doesn't want to be found, Harry explained. The castle hides it. The codex waited on its pedestal, opening as Harry approached. Today, it showed detailed maps of Hogwarts, not just the corridors and classrooms that appeared on the Marauder's map, but the magical infrastructure beneath physical appearance. Glowing lines represented ley lines channeling magic through the foundation, converging at 7 critical nodes. There, Harry pointed to the node pulsing with disturbed energy. Something's wrong with that one. That's near the lake, Hermione noted, studying the map. Under the boathouse, I think. We should check it out, Ron suggested. Harry shook his head. Not yet. The codex is showing me how to strengthen my connection first. I think I need to be able to actively control more of the castle before confronting whatever's causing this. Over the next hour, Harry practiced the exercises detailed in the codex while Ron and Hermione watched in fascination. He started with simple manipulations, making torches brighten or dim, causing the stone floor to ripple, opening and closing a small door that appeared in the wall specifically for practice. As his confidence grew, Harry attempted more complex interactions. He called to a suit of armor from 3 corridors away, and they heard its metallic footsteps approaching before it entered the chamber, bowed to Harry, and returned to its post. Bloody brilliant, Ron breathed. Next, Harry focused on a nearby portrait, an elderly witch tending a cauldron, and asked her to carry a message to the fat lady. Minutes later, he felt the confirmation through his connection that the message had been delivered. The portraits form a network, Harry explained. They can communicate across the entire castle. Harry, Hermione said slowly, the strategic advantages of this are enormous. You essentially have eyes and ears everywhere in Hogwarts. And arms and legs too, Harry added, demonstrating by causing a nearby chair to slide across the floor. The more I practice, the more I can feel. By the end of the session, Harry could sense most of the castle's main structure and consciously manipulate elements within about 100-foot radius. The effort left him mentally exhausted but exhilarated. Tomorrow we should investigate that disturbed node, he said as they prepared to leave. I think I'm ready. As they made their way back toward Gryffindor Tower under the invisibility cloak, Harry noticed movement on the Marauder's map, Draco Malfoy, alone, heading toward the 7th floor. What's Malfoy doing out this late? Ron frowned. Room of requirement, maybe? Hermione suggested. For DA meetings. Harry felt a surge of panic. If he's discovered it, he could report it to Umbridge. They hurried toward the 7th floor, Harry reaching out through his connection to Hogwarts to sense what lay ahead. He could feel Malfoy's presence near the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, pacing back and forth. He's trying to get in, Harry whispered. Quick, under here. They squeezed together under the invisibility cloak, watching from around the corner as Malfoy completed his 3rd pass in front of the blank wall. Nothing happened. Malfoy swore under his breath, then tried again, muttering something they couldn't hear. Still, no door appeared. It's not working for him, Hermione observed quietly. He doesn't know exactly what to ask for. Harry focused on his connection to the castle, mentally requesting that the room of requirement remain sealed against Malfoy's attempts. He felt the castle respond, the magic of the hidden room strengthening its concealment. Frustrated after several more attempts, Malfoy finally stormed off toward the Slytherin dungeons. The 3 friends waited until he was well away before emerging from their hiding spot. That was close, Ron sighed. Too close, Harry agreed. We need to be more careful about the DA meetings. Change the timing, maybe. They continued toward Gryffindor Tower, but as they rounded the next corner, they came face to face with Filch, holding his lantern high. Students out of bed. He crowed triumphantly, looking right through their invisibility cloak. I can hear you breathing. Harry frantically reached out to the castle, and immediately felt a response. The wall beside them shimmered, revealing a doorway. In here, Harry hissed, pulling Ron and Hermione through the opening, which sealed instantly behind them. They found themselves in a narrow passage illuminated by the same soft golden light Harry had come to associate with Hogwarts' direct communication with him. Through the wall, they heard Filch's confused muttering as he searched for the students he was certain he'd detected. That was brilliant! Ron exclaimed when Filch's footsteps finally receded. It wasn't me, Harry said. It was Hogwarts. The castle is protecting us. The passage led them directly to a point just outside the portrait hole. As they prepared to enter, Harry felt a strange prickling sensation at the back of his neck. He turned to see a shadow moving at the far end of the corridor, too tall for a student, too fluid for a teacher. Someone's watching, he whispered, but when he blinked, the shadow was gone. That night, Harry dreamed of Hogwarts, not as a building, but as a living entity with a heartbeat that synchronized with his own. In the dream, he could feel every stone, every beam, every enchantment woven into the ancient structure. But beneath this harmony was a discordant note, a wrongness emanating from somewhere deep within the foundations. Something foreign had invaded Hogwarts, something that didn't belong, and it was spreading like poison through the castle's magical veins. Harry woke with the certainty that they couldn't wait any longer. They needed to find the disturbed ward node immediately, before whatever was corrupting it spread further. The following day brought heavy rain, keeping most students indoors during break periods. Harry used the opportunity to lead Ron and Hermione toward the boathouse, where the codex had indicated the troubled ward node was located. Umbridge has 2 of her ministry cronies watching the main entrance, Ron reported, returning from a scouting mission ahead. We can't get through without being seen. Harry closed his eyes, reaching out to Hogwarts. There's another way, he said after a moment. Through the kitchens. The castle's showing me. They followed Harry's lead, stopping briefly in the kitchen to greet the house elves and collect a few sandwiches. Brilliant strategy, Ron approved. Behind a stack of flour sacks, Harry found a narrow door that even Hermione hadn't known about. It wasn't there before, she insisted. The castle created it for you. Not created, Harry corrected. Revealed. Most of these passages have always been here, they're just hidden until needed. The passage descended steeply, curving around the foundations of the castle until it emerged behind a large rock near the boathouse. Rain pelted the lake surface as they dashed across the exposed ground and into the wooden structure where first years arrived each September. The node should be below us, Harry said, scanning the weathered floorboards. Under the water, I think. Hermione cast a quick detection spell. There's definitely strong magic here. But how do we access something underwater? Harry knelt, placing his palm against the rough wood. Show me, he whispered to the castle. The floorboards shifted beneath his hand, separating to reveal a small opening. Below, instead of lake water, they saw a stone staircase descending into darkness. Wicked, Ron breathed. Lumos, Hermione cast, leading the way down the narrow stairs. The opening sealed above them as the last person descended. The staircase led to a small, circular chamber carved directly into the bedrock beneath the lake. Water pressed against crystal windows embedded in the walls, giving the impression of being inside an aquarium. In the center of the room stood a waist-high pillar of marble, inscribed with runes that glowed with blue light. This is it, Harry said, feeling the power radiating from the pillar. One of the 7 primary ward nodes. He approached carefully, noticing immediately that something was wrong. Among the glowing blue runes, one symbol pulsed with angry red light. More concerning, thin tendrils of what looked like black mold spread from the corrupted rune, slowly creeping toward its neighbors. Something's infecting it, Hermione said, alarmed. Some kind of magical corruption. Harry reached toward the pillar, but Hermione caught his wrist. Wait. We don't know what that is. It could be dangerous. I have to try, Harry insisted. The codex showed me how wardens can reset disturbed wards. Before Hermione could object further, a voice spoke from the shadows behind them. I wouldn't touch that if I were you, Potter. They spun around, wands raised. Draco Malfoy stepped into the light, his own wand casually held at his side. Malfoy. Ron snarled. How did you find this place? I followed you, obviously, Draco drawled. Not very subtle, the three of you sneaking around the castle. Especially now that Potter's developed his unusual connection. Harry tensed. What do you know about that? Malfoy stepped closer, eyeing the corrupted ward stone with what appeared to be genuine concern. More than you, apparently. That corruption isn't something you can simply wipe away. It's a progressive degradation spell designed to spread through connected magical systems. Like a disease. And how exactly would you know that? Hermione demanded. Draco's expression hardened. Because my father described it to me. It's one of the Dark Lord's specialties, corrupting existing magical protections to create backdoors. And right now, this particular bit of nasty work is creating a vulnerability in Hogwarts' defensive wards. Harry stared at him in disbelief. Why are you telling us this? Why not just report us to Umbridge? Something complicated passed across Draco's face. Contrary to what you might believe, Potter, I don't actually want to see Hogwarts fall to the Dark Lord. This is my school too. How touching, Ron muttered skeptically. Besides, Draco continued, ignoring him, Umbridge is just a pawn. She has no idea what's really happening. Harry studied Malfoy carefully. Against all odds, he seemed to be telling the truth. So who planted this corruption? That educational consultant who arrived last week, Valerian Travers. He's no ministry official. He's a Death Eater, and he specializes in breaking protective enchantments. Draco's voice dropped. My father mentioned that the Dark Lord has a particular interest in accessing Hogwarts without triggering its ancient defenses. And why should we believe you? Ron challenged. Draco's eyes flashed. Because, Weasley, unlike some, I can recognize when self-preservation requires unexpected alliances. Hermione was examining the corrupted rune more closely. This is advanced dark magic. How would we even begin to counter it? We don't, Draco said simply. Potter does. That's what this whole Warden business is about, isn't it? The castle chose you because it sensed the attack. Harry's suspicions piqued. How do you know about Wardens? Slytherin family histories include more than just tales of pureblood superiority, Draco replied. The last Warden was Eldritch Diggory, Cedric's great-grandfather. He protected Hogwarts during Grindelwald's rise. The mention of Cedric sent a pang through Harry's chest, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the problem at hand. If you're really here to help, tell me how to remove this corruption. Draco hesitated, then said, I don't know exactly. But from what I understand, Wardens can channel their own magic through the castle's existing enchantments to reinforce them. The castle itself might guide you if you let it. Harry turned back to the corrupted ward stone, placing his hands on either side of it without quite touching the surface. He closed his eyes, reaching for his connection to Hogwarts. Immediately, he felt the castle's response, a surge of energy flowing from deep within its foundations, up through the stone beneath his feet, into his body. It's working with me, Harry murmured. Showing me what to do. Following the castle's guidance, Harry slowly traced counter-runes in the air above the corrupted symbol. Golden light trailed from his fingertips, forming glowing patterns that hovered over the ward stone. As the pattern completed, Harry pressed his palm directly against the stone, ignoring Hermione's gasp of concern. Pain shot up his arm as the corruption tried to spread to him, but the castle's magic formed a barrier, channeling through Harry rather than letting him absorb the dark energy. The corrupted rune flared bright red, then began to fade as Harry's counterspell took effect. The black tendrils receded, withering away until the entire ward stone glowed with healthy blue light once more. Harry stumbled back, drained but triumphant. Ron caught him before he could fall. You did it, Hermione whispered, examining the ward stone. It's completely restored. For now, Draco cautioned. But Travers will notice his corruption has been cleansed. He'll try again, probably at a different node. Then we need to protect all of them, Harry said, straightening. The Founder's Codex shows their locations. We can set up monitoring charms. Or we could just expose Travers, Ron suggested. Tell Dumbledore or McGonagall what he's really doing here. Draco shook his head. Without proof, it would be your word against his. And with Umbridge controlling communications in and out of Hogwarts. Malfoy's right, Harry admitted reluctantly. We need evidence before we make accusations. For now, our priority is protecting the ward nodes. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Harry turned to Draco. Why are you really helping us, Malfoy? What's in it for you? Draco's expression became unreadable. Let's just say I'm hedging my bets, Potter. The Dark Lord may be powerful, but he's not the only power worth considering. He gestured around them. Hogwarts has stood for 1,000 years. It might be wise to stay on its good side. With that cryptic statement, he headed up the stairs, leaving the trio to follow. Over the next few days, Harry, Ron, and Hermione established a rotation to monitor the 7 ward nodes identified in the codex. To Harry's surprise, Draco provided valuable assistance, using his prefect status to move freely around the castle without suspicion. Their unlikely alliance remained secret, conducted through carefully worded notes delivered by seemingly random portraits that had joined Harry's growing network of castle allies. Meanwhile, Harry continued strengthening his bond with Hogwarts through daily practice. Each session expanded his awareness and control, until he could sense activity throughout the entire castle and consciously manipulate elements at increasingly greater distances. Doors opened for him automatically, staircases positioned themselves conveniently whenever he approached, and portraits kept him informed of Umbridge's movements. The castle itself seemed to be awakening more fully with each passing day. Students noticed strange occurrences, classrooms that adjusted their temperature for comfort, candles that lit themselves when needed, lost items mysteriously finding their way back to their owners. Most attributed these phenomena to Hogwarts' normal magical quirks, but a few more perceptive individuals, like Luna Lovegood, sensed the change. The castle likes you, Harry, Luna commented dreamily when a suit of armor stepped aside to let them pass in a crowded corridor. It's nice to see Hogwarts happy again. It's been sad for so long. You can tell? Harry asked, surprised. Luna nodded. Of course. Buildings have feelings too, especially magical ones. Hogwarts has been lonely, so many people living inside it, but no one really connecting with it. She smiled at him. Until you. Before Harry could respond, alarms blared throughout the castle, Umbridge's newest security measure, designed to alert staff to unauthorized magic. Students scattered in panic as pink-uniformed Inquisitorial Squad members converged on their location. 3rd floor. Hermione gasped, checking the Marauders' map. Someone's attacking the ward node in the restricted section. Harry reached out through his connection to Hogwarts, immediately sensing the disturbance. Another corruption attempt, more aggressive than the first. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the library, trusting Ron and Hermione to follow. Wait! Luna called after them. The Nargles say there's a trap. Harry hesitated, having learned not to dismiss Luna's warnings. What kind of trap? A waiting one, she said cryptically. Be careful, Harry. As they raced toward the library, Harry felt the castle responding to his urgency. Doors opened before they reached them, staircases aligned for the most direct route, and passing ghosts cleared corridors of lingering students. Even Mrs. Norris, encountering them at a junction, merely blinked and padded away in the opposite direction. They reached the library to find Madame Pants arguing heatedly with Umbridge and 2 ministry officials. The restricted section is off-limits without proper authorization. Pants insisted. Ministry Decree No. 26 gives me full access to all areas of Hogwarts, Umbridge replied smugly. Now step aside. Harry signaled for Ron and Hermione to wait in the shadows while he closed his eyes, extending his senses into the restricted section beyond. He could feel someone moving among the ancient books, Travers, no doubt, working quickly while Umbridge created a distraction. We can't get past them, Hermione whispered. We don't need to, Harry replied. I can reach the ward node from here. Concentrating intensely, Harry visualized the restricted section's layout. The ward node was concealed behind a particular bookshelf, accessible only by removing a specific volume, Magic Most Ancient, according to the codex. Harry focused on that book, willing it to move. In the restricted section, the heavy tome slid from its shelf, triggering the hidden mechanism. The bookcase swung silently inward, revealing the concealed chamber containing the ward node. Harry sensed Travers's surprise, followed by hurried movement as the Death Eater seized the opportunity to access his target. "He's at the node," Harry murmured. "I need to stop him." Unable to physically intervene, Harry turned to the castle itself. "Help me," he whispered, placing his palm against the nearest wall. The response was immediate. Throughout the restricted section, books flew from their shelves, swirling around Travers in a literary tornado. Chains that normally secured the most dangerous volumes snaked across the floor, wrapping around his ankles. The intruder's startled shout drew Umbridge's attention. "What in Merlin's name?" She pushed past Madame Pants, hurrying toward the disturbance. Harry seized the opportunity, mentally directing the swarm of books to drive Travers away from the ward node while simultaneously reaching for the node itself. From this distance, cleansing the corruption would be difficult, but the castle amplified his effort, channeling energy through the very stones of Hogwarts to reinforce his spell. Umbridge and her ministry companions reached the restricted section just as Travers stumbled out, batting away persistent volumes that continued to assault him. "Valerian! What happened?" Umbridge demanded. "The castle," Travers gasped, struggling to maintain his dignified facade. "It's resisting the inspection spells. Some kind of automated defense mechanism." Harry felt a surge of satisfaction, followed immediately by concern. Travers hadn't managed to corrupt this node, but he'd come close, and now he knew the castle was actively fighting back. As Umbridge led Travers away, fussing over his disheveled appearance, Harry sensed something else, a subtle magical trace left behind, not on the ward node itself but on the surrounding stones. A tracking spell, designed to monitor any further interactions with the node. "He's getting clever," Harry murmured. "Setting traps." "What now?" Ron asked as they retreated to a safe distance. "We need to check all the nodes immediately," Harry decided. "And we need to find out exactly what Travers is planning. This isn't just about creating a back door anymore, he's too persistent." "I might know someone who can help," Hermione said thoughtfully. "But you won't like it." Hermione's source turned out to be Draco, who arranged a secret meeting in the Room of Requirement that evening. To Harry's surprise, the Slytherin wasn't alone. Blaise Zabini and, more shockingly, Daphne Greengrass accompanied him. "Before you hex anyone," Draco drawled, noting their raised wands, "they're here to help." "Why would they help us?" Ron demanded. "Because not all Slytherins support the Dark Lord," Daphne replied coolly. "Some of us have more sense than that." Blaise nodded. "My mother has always maintained strict neutrality in wizarding conflicts. She's taught me to recognize which way the wind is blowing. And right now," Draco continued, "there's a hurricane coming. Travers isn't just trying to create access for Death Eaters, he's attempting something much more ambitious." "What?" Harry asked. "Total control of Hogwarts," Daphne said grimly. "My father works in the Department of Magical Architecture. He studies how ancient magical buildings can be manipulated through their foundation enchantments. Travers consulted with him last summer, asking very specific questions about Hogwarts. The corruption spells are just the first step," Blaise explained. "Once all 7 ward nodes are compromised, Travers plans to implement a redirection ritual that would transfer control of Hogwarts magic from its natural state to a single external controller. Himself," Harry concluded. Draco shook his head. "Worse. The Dark Lord." A heavy silence fell over the room as they processed this information. "That's why Hogwarts chose a warden now," Hermione realized. The castle sensed the existential threat to its very nature. "Exactly," Daphne confirmed. A warden is Hogwarts' ultimate defense mechanism. So what's Travers' next move? Ron asked. According to what I've overheard, Draco said, he plans to corrupt the remaining nodes simultaneously. Umbridge has scheduled a school-wide mandatory assembly for tomorrow afternoon, something about new ministry educational standards. A distraction, Harry understood. With everyone in the Great Hall, Travers and his ministry assistants will have free access to the rest of the castle. We need to protect all the nodes at once, Hermione said. But there are 7 of them and only 3 of us. 5 of us, Daphne corrected. 6, actually, Luna's dreamy voice announced as she slipped into the room behind them. The Raxperts told me you needed help. Harry smiled, not even questioning how she'd found them. Thanks, Luna. We're still 1 short, Ron pointed out. I think I can cover 2 nodes, Harry said. My connection with the castle is strong enough now that I can project to multiple locations, especially if I'm positioned centrally. That's settled then, Draco said briskly. We each take positions near a node before the assembly begins. Travers won't expect resistance, he thinks his tracking spells will warn him of any activity. About those, Harry grinned. I've asked the castle to feed them false information. As far as Travers can tell, the nodes are unmonitored. Draco looked impressed despite himself. Clever, Potter. They spent the next hour planning their defense strategy, assigning each person to a specific ward node based on their location and accessibility. Harry would take the 2 most central nodes, positioned in the heart of the castle where his connection was strongest. The others would each guard one of the remaining 5, prepared to alert Harry immediately if they detected any tampering. As the meeting concluded, Luna lingered behind while the others filed out. Be careful tomorrow, Harry, she said, her usual dreaminess replaced by uncharacteristic seriousness. The castle's very worried about you. About me? Why? Luna's pale eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. Because you're becoming more like it every day. The bond goes both ways, you know. Hogwarts is becoming more human, and you're becoming more, castle-like. What does that mean? Harry asked, unsettled. Just remember to stay Harry, Luna said, squeezing his hand. The castle needs Harry Potter, not another set of enchanted stones. With that cryptic warning, she drifted out, leaving Harry alone with his thoughts and the increasingly vocal presence of Hogwarts in his mind. That night, Harry dreamed he was the castle, not metaphorically, but literally. His body was stone and mortar, his veins were corridors, his heartbeat was the rhythm of footsteps on flagstone floors. Students moved through him like blood cells, and he could feel every emotion that permeated his walls: joy, anxiety, excitement, fear. He was ancient and powerful and desperately lonely, reaching across centuries for someone who could truly understand what it meant to be Hogwarts. He woke with tears on his face and the certainty that Luna was right. The bond was changing him, just as it was changing the castle. The question was, could he complete his mission as warden without losing himself in the process? The day of Umbridge's mandatory assembly dawned cold and clear. Breakfast in the Great Hall buzzed with speculation about the purpose of the gathering, though few seemed concerned, just another opportunity for the High Inquisitor to assert her authority with new rules or restrictions. Only Harry and his unlikely band of allies understood the true significance of the afternoon's events. They exchanged subtle glances across house tables, confirming their readiness with almost imperceptible nods. Even the castle seemed tense, its usual magical background hung sharper, more alert. As students filed reluctantly toward the Great Hall after lunch, Harry met briefly with each of his co-conspirators, confirming their positions and communication strategy. They would use a modification of the DA's enchanted coins to signal trouble, allowing instant alerts without detection. Remember, Harry told them, don't try to cleanse the corruption yourself. Signal me, and I'll channel the castle's power to help. Draco, looking uncharacteristically nervous, pulled Harry aside before taking his position. Potter, if this goes wrong. It won't, Harry said firmly. But if it does, Draco insisted, and Travers succeeds. Hogwarts under the Dark Lord's control would be. He seemed unable to finish the thought. I know, Harry said quietly. That's why we won't let it happen. As Umbridge's saccharine voice echoed through the castle, announcing the imminent start of the assembly, Harry positioned himself in an abandoned classroom on the 4th floor, centrally located between the 2 ward nodes he was responsible for. Through his connection with Hogwarts, he could sense his allies taking their positions, Hermione in the library near the restricted section node, Ron beneath the kitchens, Luna in the astronomy tower, Blaise near the dungeons, and Daphne by the hospital wing. Draco had drawn perhaps the most dangerous assignment, the boathouse node, where Travers had made his first attempt. As a prefect, he could claim to be checking for stragglers, but his absence from the assembly would eventually be noticed. Harry closed his eyes, extending his awareness throughout the castle. For a moment, he simply marveled at how far his connection had developed. He could sense the great hall filling with students, feel Umbridge's smug satisfaction as she prepared to address her captive audience, and detect the subtle movements of figures slipping away from the gathering, Travers and his accomplices, no doubt. They're moving, Harry whispered to the empty classroom. The walls seemed to lean in, listening. 3 groups. Heading toward the nodes. Through his connection to the enchanted coins, Harry warned his allies, positions ready. 3 targets moving. Now came the difficult part, waiting to see which nodes Travers would target first. Harry extended his senses further, pushing the limits of his awareness. The strain made his head pound, but he persisted, determined to detect any approach to the ward nodes. The first alert came from Hermione's coin, movement near library. Seconds later, Blaise, 2 approaching dungeon node. Then Draco, Travers himself at boathouse. 3 simultaneous attacks, just as they'd predicted. Harry focused first on supporting Hermione, who faced the closest threat. Through his connection with Hogwarts, he could almost see through the castle's eyes, the portraits, the stones, the very air charged with ancient magic. He sensed a ministry wizard approaching the restricted section, Madame Pants conveniently absent from her usual post. Reaching out to that section of the castle, Harry silently commanded, "Defend." The response was immediate and spectacularly effective. As the wizard reached for the trigger book, the entire bookcase shuddered and shifted, stone grinding against stone as the wall sealed itself, eliminating the entrance to the ward node chamber. The startled wizard cast detection spells, trying to understand what had happened, but the castle had literally changed its own architecture, removing the access point entirely. "One contained," Harry messaged through the coin. Immediately, he shifted his focus to Blaise in the dungeons, who faced 2 opponents. This situation required more direct intervention. Harry concentrated, drawing deeply on his connection with Hogwarts, and felt the castle respond by activating one of its more obscure defensive measures. The dungeon corridor between the intruders and the ward node flooded suddenly with thick, cold mist, not a mere atmospheric effect, but an ancient containment spell designed to confuse and disorient unwelcome visitors. Through Hogwarts awareness, Harry sensed the 2 wizards stumbling blindly in the mist, unable to proceed or even find their way back out. Blaise, safely positioned behind them, added his own Confundus charm to enhance the effect. 2 contained, Harry updated. That left the most dangerous target, Travers himself at the boathouse, where Draco waited alone. Harry reached for that distant part of the castle, but found his connection weaker there, at the very edge of Hogwarts' foundations. He could sense Draco hiding behind stacked rowboats, watching as Travers performed complex spellwork over the floor where the entrance to the ward node lay concealed. Unlike his accomplices, Travers came prepared for resistance. He had already neutralized the standard protective enchantments and was now revealing the hidden staircase. Harry tried to command the passage to seal itself as he'd done in the library, but Travers' counterspells blocked the castle's response. Travers breaking through, Draco's message flashed urgently. "Need direct intervention." Harry made a split-second decision. Rather than trying to control the castle from a distance, he would go to the boathouse himself. "Coming to you," he messaged Draco before springing to his feet. As he raced through the corridors, Hogwarts aided his journey. Staircases aligned perfectly, doors swung open before he reached them, and at one point, a section of floor actually accelerated his movement, almost like a conveyor belt. Within minutes, he was approaching the entrance to the passage leading to the boathouse. Just as he reached for the door, a searing pain shot through his scar. Harry staggered, bracing himself against the wall as a vision flashed through his mind: Voldemort, watching through Travers' eyes, seeing the corruption of Hogwarts wards unfolding in real time. "He knows," Harry gasped, realizing the full implications. This wasn't just Travers' plan, Voldemort himself was directing the attack, using his Death Eater as a conduit to witness the subversion of Hogwarts' ancient protections. The connection faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Harry shaken but more determined than ever. He pushed through the door and sprinted down the passage toward the boathouse, emerging just as Travers disappeared down the hidden staircase, Draco nowhere in sight. Harry approached cautiously, wand drawn. Had Travers discovered Draco? Was his unlikely ally now a hostage, or worse? The stone steps beckoned, and Harry descended slowly, alert for any sign of an ambush. The chamber below looked different than before. The corrupted ward stone now sat in the center of an elaborate ritual circle drawn in what looked disturbingly like blood. Travers stood with his back to the entrance, chanting in a language Harry didn't recognize while making complex wand movements over the stone. And Draco was motionless on the floor nearby, clearly stunned or worse. "Stop!" Harry commanded, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. Travers turned, showing no surprise at Harry's appearance. His handsome, aristocratic features twisted into a cruel smile. "Potter. How convenient. The Dark Lord hoped you might join us." "Step away from the ward stone," Harry demanded, advancing into the chamber. Travers laughed. "Or what? You'll stun me? Use one of your pathetic defense spells. This is ancient magic, boy, far beyond your comprehension." "I understand enough," Harry replied, reaching out to Hogwarts through their bond. Immediately, he felt the castle's response, stronger here, directly above one of its primary magical nodes. The crystal windows showing the lake outside darkened as the water beyond became agitated. The pressure increased visibly, tiny cracks appearing in the enchanted glass. Travers noticed too, his smile faltering slightly. "Ah, the famous Warden bond. Impressive party trick, but ultimately futile. This node is already mine." He gestured to the ward stone, where the corruption had spread much further than before, black tendrils covering nearly half its surface. "What does Voldemort want with Hogwarts?" Harry asked, stalling while he gathered his strength for a counterattack. "He never attended school here. The Dark Lord's interest in Hogwarts goes far beyond sentiment," Travers replied, apparently happy to monologue while his corruption spell continued working. "This castle contains magical secrets that have been forgotten for centuries. With control of its fundamental enchantments, he can turn Hogwarts from a school into a fortress, from a symbol of education into a symbol of his absolute power." As he spoke, Harry noticed something Travers hadn't, Draco's fingers twitching slightly, his eyes fluttering. Not as unconscious as he appeared, then. Harry needed to keep Travers distracted. "You're too late," Harry bluffed. "Your accomplices have been captured. The other nodes are secure." Travers smiled thinly. "One node is sufficient to begin the process. The corruption spreads naturally through connected magical pathways. Once it reaches the central nexus beneath the Great Hall, the entire castle will fall under our control." "That's where you're wrong," Harry said, stepping closer to the ward stone. "Hogwarts doesn't want your control. It chose me." With that declaration, Harry channeled his magic through his bond with the castle, directing a surge of pure energy at the corrupted ward stone. The stone flared with golden light as Harry's magic clashed with Travers' corruption. Travers snarled, raising his wand to counter Harry's effort. "Foolish boy. You can't possibly understand the forces you're interfering with." The magical standoff intensified, corruption fighting cleansing energy in visible waves across the ward stone's surface. Harry felt the strain immediately. This was far more difficult than his previous cleansing efforts. Travers was actively fighting back, channeling dark magic with practiced skill. Just as Harry's strength began to waver, Draco moved. From his position on the floor, he cast a silent trip jinx that caught Travers by surprise, breaking his concentration momentarily. That split second was all Harry needed. Now, he shouted, not to Draco but to Hogwarts itself. The castle responded with spectacular force. The crystal windows shattered inward, but instead of flooding the chamber with lake water, the liquid formed into tendrils that snaked around Travers, binding him in place. Simultaneously, the ward stone pulsed with blinding golden light as Harry poured everything he had into cleansing the corruption. Travers struggled against his watery bonds, his face contorted with rage. This changes nothing, Potter. The Dark Lord has already seen enough. He knows the castle's weaknesses now. Then we'll fix them, Harry replied through gritted teeth, maintaining his focus on the ward stone. The corruption receded rapidly under the combined assault of Harry's magic and Hogwarts' own power. As the last black tendril vanished, the stone gleamed with renewed blue light, free of taint. Travers howled with frustration as his spell collapsed. The watery bonds restraining him solidified into true magical chains, binding him securely. Well done, Potter, Draco said weakly, pulling himself to a sitting position. Though your timing could have been better. He got the drop on me before I could warn you. You did fine, Harry assured him, checking Draco for injuries. Can you walk? Draco nodded, accepting Harry's hand up. What now? Travers won't be missed immediately, but eventually Umbridge will notice her consultant has disappeared. Now we take him to Dumbledore, Harry decided. With a captured Death Eater and proof of an attack on Hogwarts, not even the Ministry can ignore what's happening. Dumbledore isn't here, Travers sneered. And by the time he returns, it will be too late. The Dark Lord has other methods, other agents. He means Umbridge, Draco translated. She may not be a Death Eater, but she's clearing the path for them, whether she realizes it or not. Harry felt a sudden surge through his connection with Hogwarts, an urgent warning. Something was happening in the Great Hall. He closed his eyes, extending his awareness, and sensed chaos erupting during the assembly. Students screaming, teachers casting protective spells. We need to get back, Harry said urgently. Something's wrong. They secured Travers with additional binding spells, then hurried back toward the castle proper. As they emerged into the main building, they found corridors filled with panicked students fleeing from the Great Hall. What's happening? Harry grabbed a passing Hufflepuff. Dementors, the boy gasped. Came right through the walls during Umbridge's speech. Harry and Draco exchanged alarmed glances. The wards, Harry realized. When Travers corrupted them, he must have weakened the Dementor-repelling enchantments too. They pushed against the tide of fleeing students, making their way toward the Great Hall. Inside, they found a nightmarish scene. At least a dozen Dementors glided between the house tables, feeding on the fear and happiness of those trapped inside. Professors McGonagall and Flitwick stood back to back, producing patron uses that held some Dementors at bay while Umbridge cowered beneath the staff table, her wand forgotten beside her. Harry raised his own wand without hesitation. Expecto Patronum. His silver stag erupted forth, charging the nearest cluster of Dementors and driving them back. I can't produce a Patronus, Draco admitted, looking pale. Find the others, Harry instructed. Make sure all the ward nodes are secure. This could be a diversion. As Draco hurried away, Harry joined the professors in corralling the Dementors. His stag Patronus was stronger than the others, fueled by his connection with Hogwarts itself. Together, they drove the dark creatures toward the entrance hall. Potter, McGonagall gasped, maintaining her tabby cat Patronus with visible effort. How did they get through the wards? Someone tampered with them, Harry explained between casting spells. We caught him, but the damage was already done. We need to re-establish the protective enchantments. Only the headmaster can, McGonagall began. Or the warden, Harry interrupted. Professor, I need to get to the central nexus, under the Great Hall. I can reset the wards from there. McGonagall's eyebrows shot up, but she nodded without questioning how Harry knew about the warden bond. We'll handle the Dementors. Go. Harry sprinted toward the staff table, calling on his connection with Hogwarts to reveal the entrance to the central nexus. The stone floor behind the headmaster's chair shimmered and parted, exposing a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness. Without hesitation, Harry plunged downward, his wand tip illuminating the ancient steps. Unlike the other ward nodes, this chamber was vast, a circular cathedral of stone with a ceiling that rose at least 30 feet. In the center stood a massive crystal, pulsing with multicolored light that illuminated the entire space. This was the heart of Hogwarts, the central nexus where all the ley lines converged, where the founders had embedded their most powerful enchantments. Harry approached reverently, feeling the castle's magic wash over him like a physical force. Thin threads of corruption, remnants from Travers' attack on the boathouse node, had reached this far, black tendrils creeping across the crystal's otherwise perfect surface. Harry placed both hands directly on the crystal, closing his eyes as he fully opened himself to Hogwarts magic. The connection that formed transcended anything he'd experienced before. In an instant, Harry wasn't just communicating with the castle, he was the castle, his consciousness expanding to encompass every stone, every corridor, every enchantment woven into Hogwarts being over 1,000 years. He felt the Dementors as violations, dark intrusions in Hogwarts' magical field. With a thought, he reinforced the failing wards, channeling power through the crystal nexus to restore the protective enchantments. The castle responded eagerly, its magic amplifying Harry's intent. Throughout Hogwarts, students and teachers watched in awe as the stones of the castle began to glow with soft golden light. The pursuing Dementors found themselves trapped by walls of force that materialized around them, corridors that shifted to create inescapable dead ends. Windows and doors sealed themselves against further intrusion. In the Nexus chamber, Harry worked frantically to cleanse the corruption from the central crystal. Unlike the smaller ward nodes, this required more than magical force, it needed understanding, precision, a delicate touch that could disentangle dark magic from the castle's core without causing further damage. Luna's warning echoed in his mind, remember to stay Harry. As the bond deepened, he felt his identity blurring, merging with Hogwarts' ancient consciousness. It would be so easy to surrender completely, to become one with the castle he loved. But Harry Potter was needed too, his human perspective, his capacity for choice, his ability to fight not just for Hogwarts but for everyone within its walls. With tremendous effort, Harry maintained the balance between merging and separating, working with Hogwarts rather than being consumed by it. Gradually, the corruption receded. The central crystal pulsed with renewed brilliance, its light changing from chaotic flickers to a steady, harmonious glow. Harry felt the castle's relief as a tangible thing, gratitude and triumph flowing through their shared connection. When the last trace of corruption vanished, Harry carefully withdrew from the deep bond, gently separating his consciousness from Hogwarts while maintaining their connection. He staggered back from the crystal, physically and magically exhausted but filled with a profound sense of accomplishment. "We did it," he whispered to the listening stones. The castle's response came not in words but in sensation, warmth, security, a promise that their partnership had only just begun. Hogwarts had chosen its warden well, and together they would face whatever challenges came next. As Harry climbed the stairs back to the Great Hall, he knew that today marked only the first battle in a longer war. Voldemort had failed to claim Hogwarts, but he wouldn't stop trying. Travers was captured, but Umbridge remained, and other agents would surely follow. Yet for the first time since Voldemort's return, Harry felt truly hopeful. He wasn't facing these threats alone anymore. He had his friends, not just Ron and Hermione, but unlikely allies like Draco, Blaise and Daphne. He had the DA, who would need to train harder than ever for the coming conflict. And most importantly, he had Hogwarts itself, ancient, powerful, and now fully awakened to its own potential through their unprecedented bond. The castle had always been Harry's first true home. Now it was something more, partner, protector, and the foundation upon which he would build his stand against the darkness that threatened them all. Chapter 2, Corridors of Power. Ministry officials to see you, Headmaster, Professor McGonagall announced, entering Dumbledore's office with a stack of pink-tinted parchments. Dumbledore looked up from his desk, his blue eyes twinkling despite the gravity of the situation. I see. And how many ministry officials would that be, Minerva? 4, including Travers' replacement. They're insisting on an immediate meeting regarding the security breach that occurred during yesterday's assembly. Harry Potter sat in a comfortable armchair across from Dumbledore, still processing the events of the previous day. The castle's presence hummed in the back of his mind, a constant reminder of his new role as Hogwarts Warden. Through their bond, he could sense the ministry officials gathering in the entrance hall, their presence like a discordant note in the castle's magical field. I'll handle this, Harry said, rising to his feet. I know what they're really here for. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. Are you certain, Harry? This is ministry business, and these are not casual visitors. They're looking for me, Harry said simply. Travers was just the first. They want to understand my connection to Hogwarts. And what better way to understand it than to study you directly? Dumbledore's voice carried a note of warning. Harry, you must be careful. The ministry's interest in you has always been complicated. I know, Harry replied, his hand unconsciously moving to his scar. But I can't hide anymore. Not after yesterday. Hogwarts and we're connected now, whether they like it or not. Very well, Dumbledore said after a moment's consideration. But take someone with you. Minerva, would you accompany Harry? McGonagall nodded, a glint of approval in her eyes. I'd be honored to stand with the Warden of Hogwarts. As they descended the spiral staircase, Harry felt the castle's protective presence intensify. Portraits whispered to each other as he passed, and the stones beneath his feet seemed to pulse with anticipation. By the time they reached the entrance hall, the ministry officials had gathered, 3 wizards and a witch, all wearing the distinctive plum-colored robes of high-ranking ministry personnel. Potter, the lead wizard said, his voice dripping with false cordiality. Albus Dumbledore. We need to speak with you immediately regarding yesterday's incident. Harry stepped forward, meeting the man's gaze directly. I'm right here. What do you want to know? The wizard's eyes narrowed. You'll address me as Minister Fudge or as Your Excellency. And we'll ask the questions, boy. Harry felt McGonagall tense beside him, but he placed a calming hand on her arm. Minister Fudge, he corrected himself, though the title tasted bitter. What questions do you have? Fudge's gaze swept over Harry, lingering on his scar before moving to his hands, his stance, as if cataloguing physical evidence. First, explain how you were able to drive off a dozen Dementors single-handedly when trained Aurors have struggled with half that number. Harry shrugged, feigning nonchalance he didn't feel. I've had practice. And Hogwarts helped. Helped? Fudge's voice sharpened. How exactly does a building help drive off Dementors? It's complicated, Harry said, buying time to consider his response. Hogwarts is the most magical building in Britain. After 1,000 years of housing wizards, who knows what kind of sentience it might have developed? Fudge's face reddened. Are you suggesting the castle has consciousness? That's preposterous. Is it? Harry challenged. Or is it just something the ministry has never been able to control? The other ministry officials shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a severe-looking witch with a monocle, stepped forward. Mr. Potter, we're here to conduct a routine security assessment following yesterday's breach. We'd like to examine the areas where the Dementors entered and, no, Harry said flatly. Excuse me, the witch sputtered. You may not examine those areas, Harry stated, his voice carrying an authority that surprised even him. Hogwarts is under my protection now, and I won't allow unauthorized magical examinations that could further weaken its defenses. Fudge's face turned an alarming shade of purple. You dare, I dare, Harry interrupted, meeting the minister's gaze without flinching. You sent Dementors after me last summer. You've been systematically undermining Hogwarts' autonomy through educational decrees. And now you want access to examine its most vulnerable magical structures. I don't think so. The confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of Professor Umbridge, who swept into the entrance hall with her usual false smile. Good morning, Cornelius, she simpered. I trust you're here to see the results of our enhanced security measures. Fudge visibly relaxed, turning to her with relief. Dolores, excellent timing. We're having a productive discussion with Mr. Potter about yesterday's incident. I'm sure you are, Umbridge said, her bulging eyes moving between Harry and the minister. Though I must say, Mr. Potter's magical abilities have shown some unexpected developments recently. Perhaps we should discuss this in private. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Umbridge's interest in his connection to Hogwarts was far more dangerous than Fudge's political maneuvering. Where the minister saw a threat to his authority, Umbridge saw an opportunity for control. Actually, Harry said, I think it's time everyone understood exactly what's been happening at Hogwarts. He turned to McGonagall. Professor, would you please escort Minister Fudge and his colleagues to the Great Hall? I'll join you shortly with some demonstrations. McGonagall looked skeptical but nodded. Of course, Mr. Potter. As the ministry officials followed McGonagall toward the Great Hall, Harry felt a subtle shift in the castle's magic, a gathering of energy, like a breath held before action. The portraits lining the entrance hall leaned forward, their painted faces eager and expectant. They're all waiting for you, Warden, a portrait of a medieval wizard whispered. Hogwarts has never had a voice before. It's time to speak for it. Harry took a deep breath, centering himself. Through his bond with the castle, he could sense every corridor, every hidden room, every magical current flowing through Hogwarts' ancient stones. The power was there, waiting to be channeled, but he needed to demonstrate it carefully, enough to establish his authority, not so much that it frightened those who should be his allies. He began walking toward the Great Hall, his footsteps echoing on the flagstones. As he moved, he reached out to the castle, asking rather than commanding. The stones responded, the very architecture of Hogwarts shifting subtly around him. Portraits swung open to reveal shortcuts, staircases aligned perfectly with his path, and the walls themselves seemed to brighten as he passed. By the time Harry entered the Great Hall, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Students and teachers alike fell silent, watching as he strode to the center of the room where Fudge, Umbridge, and the other ministry officials stood with McGonagall. Mr. Potter, Fudge began, but Harry raised a hand, and the heavy doors swung shut with a resounding boom that silenced any further protest. Hogwarts has something to say, Harry announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. And since the castle has chosen me as its voice, I'll be speaking for it today. Umbridge's face contorted with outrage, but before she could speak, Harry extended his awareness through his bond with Hogwarts. The Great Hall's enchanted ceiling responded, clouds gathering and darkening until a symbolic storm broke overhead, not real rain, but a cascade of golden light that showered down on the assembled students, filling the room with warmth and magic. Whispers of amazement spread through the hall as the light touched everyone, harmless but undeniably real. Even the ministry officials looked stunned, their skepticism momentarily forgotten. This is just a small demonstration, Harry said, allowing the golden rain to fade. Hogwarts is alive, in its way. It thinks, it feels, and most importantly, it protects. And right now, it's asking for protection in return. Fudge found his voice. Preposterous. This is some kind of trick, Dolores. Surely you can see that. Umbridge's bulging eyes were fixed on Harry, calculating. I'm sure Mr. Potter has learned some impressive new spells over the summer, she said smoothly. But conscious buildings? That's a fantasy, Cornelius. Nothing more than juvenile magical theory. Is it? Harry challenged. He turned to face the Gryffindor table, focusing on Neville Longbottom. Neville, would you come here please? Neville looked terrified but rose obediently, making his way to the front. Harry placed a hand on his shoulder. Hogwarts knows all its students, he explained. It remembers their fears, their hopes, their potential. He closed his eyes, reaching through his bond to the castle's vast memory. Images flashed through his mind, Neville's parents in their prime, brilliant aurors respected throughout the wizarding world. The castle showed him their courage, their dedication, the tragedy that had befallen them at the hands of Bellatrix Lestrange and her fellow Death Eaters. Neville, Harry said softly, do you know how brave your parents were? How much they sacrificed? Neville's eyes widened. I've heard stories, but... The castle remembers everything, Harry continued. It holds their courage in its stones, waiting for you to claim it as your own heritage. He placed his palm flat against the floor. Hogwarts, if you will. The flagstones beneath Neville's feet warmed, and suddenly he gasped, his body straightening as if infused with new strength. Around his neck, the Gryffindor sword gleamed for just a moment before fading back to normal. What was that? Neville whispered, awed. A reminder, Harry said. That you carry your parents' bravery in your blood. Hogwarts knows it. Now you do too. The entire hall was silent, watching this exchange with bated breath. Even Fudge seemed momentarily stunned, his political calculations momentarily forgotten in the face of genuine magic. Umbridge was the first to recover. Sentimentality and parlor tricks, she snapped. This changes nothing about the security situation. Doesn't it? Harry turned to face her directly. Because I think it changes everything. You see, Minister Fudge, Professor Umbridge, the castle has chosen me as its warden. That bond gives me authority over Hogwarts' defenses, its secrets, and yes, its voice. He raised his hands, and throughout the great hall, the house tables began to glow with their respective colors, red for Gryffindor, green for Slytherin, blue for Ravenclaw, and yellow for Hufflepuff. The colors pulsed in harmony, creating a breathtaking display of unity. This castle has protected generations of witches and wizards, Harry continued. It has celebrated our triumphs and mourned our losses. It has stood firm against dark forces for 1,000 years. And now it's asking for help against a threat that comes not from outside, but from within. Fudge's eyes narrowed. What threat? The same one that sent Dementors after me last summer, Harry replied. The same one that murdered Cedric Diggory. Voldemort has returned, and he wants control of Hogwarts. The students gasped, and even some of the teachers looked shocked. Only Dumbledore remained calm, his expression thoughtful as he watched Harry's performance. Umbridge's face twisted with rage. You will not speak that name in this school, Mr. Potter. 50 points from Gryffindor for your insubordination, and another 50 for spreading malicious lies. Harry smiled thinly. You can take points if you like, Professor, but it won't change the truth. Voldemort wants Hogwarts because it's the key to controlling the wizarding world. Its ancient magic, its protective wards, its very foundation, all of it represents power beyond what most wizards can imagine. He gestured to the walls around them. And thanks to my bond with the castle, that power has an advocate. A protector. A warden. Fudge was shaking his head in denial. This is absurd. Buildings don't choose wardens. This is some kind of elaborate confundus charm. Harry sighed. Then let me show you something that can't be charmed away. He closed his eyes, reaching deep into his bond with Hogwarts. Show them, he whispered to the castle. Throughout the great hall, the house tables began to shift. Not dramatically, but subtly, the edges flowing like liquid, the surfaces developing patterns that pulsed with magical energy. The banners above each table stirred as if caught in an unfelt breeze, and the very air seemed to thicken with power. But the most dramatic change occurred at the head table. The staff table elongated, stretching to accommodate new seats that materialized from the wood itself, not chairs, but silhouettes of chairs, glowing with the house colors of missing or fallen members of the Hogwarts community. "My parents," a trembling Ravenclaw whispered, staring at the blue silhouette that had appeared. "That's where Mum always sat." Around the hall, similar realizations spread as students recognized the spectral chairs representing lost loved ones, alumni who had died in service to the light, whose magical signatures remained woven into Hogwarts memory. "This is who Hogwarts protects," Harry said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just the living students within its walls, but everyone who has ever called this castle home. Everyone who has fought to keep it safe." Fudge looked truly disturbed now, his political facade cracking. This is unprecedented. "Albus, what is the meaning of this?" Dumbledore rose from his seat, his presence commanding immediate attention. "What you are witnessing, Cornelius, is the awakening of Hogwarts' true potential. For centuries, the castle has waited for a warden, someone who could bridge the gap between its ancient magic and the needs of the present day." He turned to Harry with unmistakable pride. "It seems that person has arrived." Umbridge was not so easily convinced. "This is absurd. Headmaster, surely you can see that Mr. Potter is manipulating the castle's natural magic for his own purposes. This bond is nothing more than dark magic." Several students gasped at the accusation, and even Fudge looked uncertain. "Dark magic?" Harry repeated, incredulous. "Professor Umbridge, I've seen dark magic. I've witnessed the consequences firsthand. What I share with Hogwarts is the opposite of dark, it's protective, it's nurturing, it's home." He gestured around them. "This castle has given me shelter when I had nowhere else to go. It has taught me, protected me, and yes, chosen me. If that's dark magic, then I'm guilty as charged." The sincerity in his voice seemed to give even the skeptical pause. Harry could feel the castle's approval flowing through their bond, a warmth that spread from his chest outward, filling him with confidence. Fudge was visibly sweating now, his political instincts recognizing a shift in power that he couldn't control. "This is highly irregular," he muttered. "We'll need to consult with the International Confederation of Wizards about conscious magical structures and their legal status." "I think that can be arranged," Dumbledore said smoothly. "But for now, Minister, perhaps you should consider that Hogwarts has made its choice. The question is whether the Ministry will respect it." Fudge looked trapped, caught between his prejudice against Harry and the impossible magic unfolding before him. Finally, he straightened his robes with an air of wounded dignity. "Very well. But this situation requires immediate documentation and oversight. Dolores, please begin drafting the necessary paperwork for Ministry supervision of Mr. Potter's activities." Umbridge's face lit up with malicious glee. "Of course, Minister. I'll begin immediately." Harry felt a surge of anger, but before he could respond, Dumbledore interjected smoothly. "I think that won't be necessary, Dolores. The relationship between a warden and their charge is deeply personal and, according to historical precedent, falls under the jurisdiction of the school's Board of Governors rather than the Ministry." Fudge looked to Umbridge, who was clearly disappointed by this development. "The board will need to be consulted," Fudge conceded reluctantly. "But make no mistake, Mr. Potter, the Ministry will be watching you closely." With that parting shot, he turned and marched toward the doors, his entourage scurrying to keep up. Umbridge lingered for a moment, her bulging eyes fixed on Harry with open hatred. "This isn't over," she hissed before following Fudge out. As the doors closed behind the Ministry officials, the Great Hall erupted into excited chatter. Students turned to each other, speculating about what they'd just witnessed, while teachers gathered around Dumbledore, their expressions ranging from awe to concern. Harry stood in the center of the room, suddenly feeling the weight of exhaustion. Maintaining the demonstrations had required tremendous focus, and the emotional confrontation had drained him further. Through his bond with Hogwarts, He could feel the castle's concern, its protective instincts rising to support him. "Harry," Dumbledore said, approaching with McGonagall, "that was extraordinary." "I had to make them understand," Harry said wearily. "If they think they can control Hogwarts or use it against Voldemort, they're wrong. The castle chose me for a reason. And that reason is becoming clear," Dumbledore replied. "But Harry, you must be cautious. The Ministry's retreat is temporary at best. Umbridge in particular will not accept this challenge to her authority." "I know," Harry sighed. "But at least now they understand what they're dealing with. Hogwarts isn't just a school anymore, it's a player in this war, and it has chosen its side." McGonagall placed a hand on his shoulder. "You spoke for the castle beautifully, Mr. Potter. I believe you've earned the respect of everyone in this room today." As if in agreement, the house tables settled back to their normal appearance, the spectral chairs fading but not disappearing entirely, still visible as faint outlines to those who knew to look for them. Harry nodded his thanks, then turned to address the students who were still buzzing with excitement. "Classes are dismissed for today," he announced. "I know that's not my decision to make, but I think Hogwarts would appreciate a moment for everyone to process what just happened." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with amusement. "I believe Mr. Potter is correct. Classes are indeed dismissed. Enjoy the unexpected free period, but I expect you all back here tomorrow, ready to learn." As the students began to file out, talking animatedly about the morning's events, Harry felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Luna Lovegood smiling at him dreamily. "The Nargles are very pleased, Harry," she said. "They say Hogwarts has been waiting a long time for someone like you." Harry managed a tired smile. "That's good to know, Luna. Though I wish they'd warned me about this earlier." Luna's expression turned serious. "They did. Remember the Raxperts? The things clouding people's minds? That was Hogwarts trying to reach you, but you weren't ready to listen yet." Harry considered this, realizing that his connection to the castle had been developing gradually, beneath his conscious awareness. "I guess I'm listening now." "You'd better be," Luna said seriously. "Because the castle is counting on you, Harry. Not just as its warden, but as its friend." With that cryptic but heartfelt statement, she drifted away, leaving Harry to ponder her words as he made his way out of the great hall. The corridors seemed different now, not just because of his new status, but because he could feel the castle's awareness surrounding him like a warm blanket. Portraits nodded to him as he passed, suits of armor straightened in his presence, and the very stones seemed to hum with approval. "Harry." He turned to see Hermione and Ron hurrying toward him, their faces a mixture of excitement and concern. "Merlin's beard, Harry!" Ron exclaimed. "Did you see the look on Fudge's face? He looked like he'd swallowed a flobberworm." Hermione was more serious. "That was incredibly dangerous, Harry. Confronting the minister like that, revealing your connection to Hogwarts in such a public way." "I had to," Harry interrupted. "If I'd let them believe they could control or study me, they would have. This way, they know Hogwarts is watching too." Ron looked impressed despite himself. "You really are the warden then? Like, officially?" Harry nodded. "According to the Founder's Codex, yeah. Though I'm still figuring out exactly what that means in practice." "Well, whatever it means, it's brilliant," Ron said with a grin. "Did you see Malfoy's face? He looked like he'd eaten something sour." "Actually, I need to talk to you about Malfoy," Harry said, lowering his voice as they turned down an empty corridor. "He's been helping us, helping me understand the corruption spells and the ward nodes." Hermione's eyebrows shot up. "Malfoy? Helping us?" "It's complicated," Harry admitted. "But he knows things about his father's work with Death Eaters that could be useful. And he's not exactly loyal to Voldemort anymore." Ron looked skeptical but didn't argue. "If you say so, mate. But I still don't trust him as far as I can throw him." "Trust isn't required," Harry said. Just cooperation against a common enemy. They continued discussing the morning's events as they made their way toward Gryffindor Tower, but Harry's mind kept drifting to the castle's presence humming in the back of his consciousness. Through their bond, he could sense activity throughout Hogwarts, students exploring newly revealed passages, portraits exchanging information about ministry movements, even the house elves bustling about their duties with renewed energy. The fat lady's portrait swung open as they approached, and Harry noticed something unusual. The frame was glowing faintly with the same golden light he'd demonstrated in the Great Hall. "Did you do that?" Hermione asked, noticing his gaze. Harry shook his head. "That's Hogwarts. The castle is celebrating, I think. It's happy to finally have a voice." As they entered the common room, they found it buzzing with excitement. Students were clustered in groups, discussing the morning's demonstration, while others were experimenting with the strange new sensitivity Hogwarts seemed to have developed. A fifth-year Hufflepuff had discovered that the armchairs would adjust their firmness to individual preferences, while a group of third-year Ravenclaws had found that the study tables could project helpful diagrams when asked politely. "It's like the whole castle has woken up," Hermione observed, shaking her head in amazement. "That's exactly what's happened," Harry said. "Hogwarts was always alive, but it was sleeping, I guess. Dreaming. Now it's awake, and it's learning to communicate." He settled into an armchair by the fire, suddenly feeling the full weight of his exhaustion. The mental effort required to maintain his bond with the castle, especially during such a public demonstration, had drained him more than he'd realized. "You should rest," Hermione said immediately, her maternal instincts kicking in. "That was a tremendous display of magic, Harry. You must be completely knackered." "I'll be fine," Harry assured her, though he couldn't suppress a yawn. "I just need a minute." As he closed his eyes, he felt the castle's presence intensify, wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. Through their bond, Hogwarts seemed to be offering him strength, sharing its ancient magic to help him recover. "Harry." He opened his eyes to find Ginny Weasley standing over him, concern etched on her features. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I'm just tired," Harry admitted. "Maintaining the bond during the demonstration took more out of me than I expected." Ginny nodded understandingly. "I can't imagine what it's like, being connected to something so old and powerful." She hesitated, then added softly, "But I think it suits you, Harry. You've always belonged at Hogwarts, more than anywhere else." The sincerity in her voice touched him deeply. "Thanks, Ginny. That means a lot." As she moved away to join her friends, Harry felt a strange sensation, not quite jealousy, but something akin to longing. Ginny had matured significantly over the past year, and he found himself noticing her in ways he hadn't before. But his connection to Hogwarts demanded so much of his attention and energy that romantic relationships seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. "Harry." This time it was Neville, looking more confident than Harry had ever seen him. "I just wanted to say thank you. For what you showed me about my parents. I've always known they were brave, but I never felt connected to that bravery before. Now I do." Harry smiled, genuinely touched. "Your parents' courage is part of who you are, Neville. Hogwarts just helped you see it." As Neville returned to his friends, Harry noticed something else, the way other students were looking at him. It wasn't just respect or admiration, it was something deeper, almost reverent. They saw him differently now, not just as the boy who lived or Dumbledore's protégé, but as something more, the Warden of Hogwarts, the voice of the castle itself. The responsibility of that role settled on his shoulders like a physical weight. He had always been a symbol, always carried expectations, but this was different. This wasn't about his own legend or reputation, it was about being worthy of Hogwarts' trust. "Harry, you have a visitor," Ron announced, nodding toward the portrait hole where Draco Malfoy stood, looking uncharacteristically awkward. Harry rose to his feet, feeling the eyes of the entire common room on him as he crossed to meet Draco at the entrance. "Potter," Draco said, his usual drawl somewhat muted. "I thought you should know, the Ministry officials are searching the castle. Not just the obvious places, but the hidden ones too. They're determined to find evidence of your control over Hogwarts. Harry nodded grimly. I expected as much. But they won't find anything they can use against me or the castle. Draco's expression was unreadable. Be careful, Potter. Umbridge in particular is not someone to underestimate. She's already drafting proposals for emergency measures regarding your status as Warden. I'll handle Umbridge, Harry said with more confidence than he felt. Right now, our priority is securing the remaining ward nodes. Travers may be captured, but Voldemort won't stop trying to corrupt them. Agreed, Draco said. I'll coordinate with the others. Meet you at the Room of Requirement in an hour. Harry nodded. 1 hour. As Draco departed, the Gryffindors in the common room erupted into excited whispers. Harry could hear fragments of their conversations. Did you see that? Malfoy was talking to Harry. Are they working together now? Maybe he's not so bad after all. The implications of his alliance with Draco would take time to settle, but Harry had more pressing concerns. He returned to his armchair, closing his eyes and reaching out through his bond with Hogwarts. Show me, he whispered to the castle. Immediately, he sensed the Ministry officials moving through the corridors, Fudge, Umbridge, and several Aurors systematically searching classrooms, offices, and common areas. But they were also attempting to access hidden passages, trying to force their way into areas protected by ancient wards. Harry felt a surge of protective anger. How dare they treat Hogwarts like a criminal to be interrogated? The castle had done nothing wrong, it had simply chosen to defend itself. Patience, he murmured, both to himself and to Hogwarts. We'll handle this properly. Through their bond, he could feel the castle's response, not words, but a complex tapestry of emotions, anger at the intrusion, determination to protect its students, and beneath it all, a deep well of ancient wisdom that reminded Harry of Dumbledore at his most enigmatic. Harry, are you all right? He opened his eyes to find Hermione watching him with concern. You spaced out there for a minute. You're not overexerting yourself with this bond, are you? I'm fine, Harry assured her, though he knew she wouldn't believe him. The connection takes some getting used to, that's all. Hermione looked skeptical but didn't press further. Well, when you're ready, Ron and I were thinking of checking the DA schedule. With everything that's happened, we should probably hold a special meeting to discuss the implications. Good idea, Harry agreed, rising from the armchair with renewed energy. I'll be there. Just need to take care of something first. He headed for the boys' dormitory, needing a moment of privacy to center himself. Once inside the empty room, he lay down on his bed and closed his eyes, fully opening himself to Hogwarts' presence. The experience was overwhelming. Suddenly, he wasn't just Harry Potter lying on a four-poster bed, he was Hogwarts itself, his consciousness expanding to encompass every stone, every enchantment, every memory woven into the castle's being over 1,000 years. He felt the Ministry officials as foreign bodies, their magic clumsy and intrusive compared to the elegant complexity of Hogwarts' natural defenses. He sensed his friends throughout the castle, Ron's loyal determination, Hermione's brilliant strategizing, Neville's growing confidence, even Malfoy's conflicted ambition. But most powerfully, he felt the students, hundreds of young witches and wizards whose hopes and fears, dreams and doubts, were now part of Hogwarts' extended awareness through their bond. The castle cared for them all, protective and nurturing, but also fiercely defensive against any threat. Harry. The sound of his name, urgent and close, pulled him back to his physical body. He opened his eyes to find Ron shaking his shoulder, looking alarmed. Mate, you've been up here for ages. Hermione's about to send a search party. Harry sat up, momentarily disoriented. How long was I gone? Couple hours at least, Ron said. You were completely zoned out. Hermione thought you might be possessed or something. Harry shook his head, trying to reorient himself. I wasn't possessed. I was connected. Really connected. He explained what he'd experienced, the expansion of consciousness, the feeling of becoming Hogwarts itself, the overwhelming sensory input of being aware of every magical current in the castle. Ron looked equal parts impressed and concerned. That sounds intense, Harry. Are you sure you can handle it? I mean, no one's ever done this before. What if it changes you somehow? It already has changed me, Harry admitted. But not in a bad way. It's like finding a part of myself I didn't know was missing. Hogwarts isn't just a building to me anymore. It's alive, it's aware, and it trusts me to protect it. Ron nodded slowly, though he still looked worried. Just promise me you won't disappear into Castle Land again without telling someone. Hermione's been going spare. I promise, Harry said, standing and stretching. Now, let's go plan that DA meeting. We've got a lot to discuss. As they descended to the common room, Harry felt more centered, more in control of the bond than before. The initial overwhelming experience had taught him valuable lessons about boundaries and balance. He could connect with Hogwarts deeply when needed, but he didn't have to surrender his individual identity completely. The common room was abuzz with activity when they arrived. Students were practicing spells, discussing defensive strategies, and organizing study groups with a level of coordination that spoke to the DA's growing effectiveness. Even younger students who weren't formally members were participating, drawn by the organization's reputation for practical defense training. Harry. He turned to see Cho Chang approaching, looking nervous but determined. I know we haven't talked much since last year. But I wanted to say that what you did today was amazing. Standing up to Umbridge and the Ministry like that, it was inspiring. Harry felt a flush of pleasure at the praise, but also a twinge of guilt. His relationship with Cho had ended badly, and he knew he still carried some responsibility for that failure. Thanks, Cho, he said sincerely. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry about how things ended between us. Cho smiled softly. It's all right, Harry. We were both dealing with a lot back then. Maybe, if things ever settle down, we could try being friends. I'd like that, Harry said, meaning it. Friends sounds good. As Cho rejoined her friends, Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Closure was a powerful thing, and he was grateful for the opportunity to achieve it, however small. The rest of the afternoon passed in a whirlwind of DA planning and coordination. They decided to hold a special meeting that evening to discuss the implications of Harry's new role as Warden, as well as to reinforce their defensive strategies in light of the Ministry's increased presence at Hogwarts. As evening approached, Harry found himself alone for a moment by the common room window, watching the sun set over the lake. The castle's presence was calmer now, content in the knowledge that its warden was back in control and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. You're thinking deep thoughts. Harry turned to see Luna sitting in a nearby armchair, her radish earrings glinting in the fading light. Just trying to process everything, Harry admitted. Being the warden, facing Voldemort, dealing with the Ministry, it's a lot. Luna nodded dreamily. The castle understands. It's been through a lot over the centuries. Wars, dark wizards, Ministry interference, Hogwarts has seen it all. It has? Harry asked, surprised. Oh yes, Luna said seriously. The stones remember. Every footstep, every spell, every moment of triumph or tragedy. Hogwarts doesn't just contain history, it is history. Harry considered this, realizing that his bond with the castle gave him access to a perspective that spanned generations. I wonder what else it knows. What other secrets are hidden in these walls? All in good time, Luna said mysteriously. The castle will share what you need to know when you need to know it. That's part of the bond too, trust. Before Harry could ask what she meant, she rose and drifted away, humming softly to herself. Harry watched her go, marveling as always at Luna's unique wisdom. In many ways, she understood Hogwarts better than anyone, perhaps because she approached it with the same open-mindedness and acceptance that the castle itself embodied. "Harry, are you ready?" He turned to see Hermione and Ron waiting by the portrait hole, their DA coins in hand. "Ready as I'll ever be," he said, joining them. As they made their way to the room of requirement, Harry felt the castle's presence guiding them, the very corridors seeming to align for their journey. By now, this assistance felt natural, expected, another aspect of the bond that was quickly becoming integral to his identity. The room of requirement had transformed into a perfect replica of the Hogwarts Great Hall, complete with floating candles and enchanted ceilings showing a star-filled sky. Students from all four houses were already gathered, their conversations dying down as Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Harry began, stepping to the front of the room. "I know we usually have our meetings on weekends, but recent events have made it necessary to discuss some important developments." He outlined what had happened that morning, his confrontation with Fudge and Umbridge, the demonstration of his bond with Hogwarts, and the Ministry's subsequent search of the castle. Throughout his explanation, he could feel the castle's support, its magic subtly enhancing his words, ensuring that every student understood the gravity of the situation. "What does this mean for us?" a Hufflepuff fifth year asked. "Are we still safe at Hogwarts?" Harry met the student's gaze directly. "Yes, you're safe. Safer than you would be anywhere else right now. Because Hogwarts is awake, and it's protecting us. But that protection requires awareness and preparation on our part too." He outlined their new defensive strategy: increased monitoring of the ward nodes, coordinated responses to any ministry interference, and enhanced training for potential confrontations with Death Eaters or their agents. "We're not just a study group anymore," Harry said, his voice carrying conviction. "We're Hogwarts' first line of defense. The DA has always been about practical defensive magic, but now that mission is more important than ever." The students responded with determined nods and murmurs of agreement. Harry could feel their resolve strengthening, their connection to each other and to Hogwarts itself deepening with every word. As the meeting progressed, Harry found himself drawing on the castle's wisdom more and more. When a nervous first year asked about the specific mechanics of the Warden bond, Harry closed his eyes for a moment, reaching out through his connection to find the answer. "Hogwarts shares knowledge through resonance," he explained, surprising himself with the insight. "It's not like reading a book or listening to a lecture. It's more like remembering something you've always known but forgotten. The castle's magic resonates with compatible magic, and in that resonance, understanding flows." The explanation seemed to satisfy the curious student, but it also gave Harry a new perspective on his own learning process. Perhaps the castle wasn't just sharing information with him, it was helping him remember ancient magical truths that were already part of his heritage as a wizard connected to all four Hogwarts houses. As the meeting wound down, Harry announced one final piece of news. "Starting tomorrow, I'll be holding special training sessions for anyone interested in learning how to work with Hogwarts defensive magic. Not everyone can be a warden, but everyone can learn to align their magic with the castle's protections." The response was overwhelmingly positive, with students from all houses expressing interest. Harry could feel the castle's pleasure at this development, its magic reaching out to touch each of them with a subtle warmth, a promise of the partnership to come. As the students began to file out, murmuring excitedly about the new training opportunities, Harry found himself face to face with Draco Malfoy, who had been watching from the back of the room. "Interesting speech, Potter," Draco said, his tone carefully neutral. "You've turned the whole school into your personal guard." "They're not my guard," Harry corrected. "They're Hogwarts defenders. And so are you, whether you admit it or not." Draco's eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. "Just remember, Potter, loyalty in Slytherin is always conditional. Don't expect us to follow you blindly." "I don't," Harry said simply. "I just expect you to do what's necessary to protect the school we both care about. Everything else is secondary." For a moment, something like respect flickered across Draco's face before his mask of superiority slipped back into place. "We'll see, Potter. We'll see." As Draco departed, Harry felt a complex mix of emotions: gratitude for his help, wariness of his true motives, and a strange sense of kinship with someone who, despite everything, was also trying to find his place in a world that had suddenly become much more complicated. "Harry, can we talk to you for a minute?" He turned to find a group of seventh-year Ravenclaws waiting patiently: Penelope Clearwater, Roger Davies, and Marietta Edgecombe. Despite her previous betrayal of the DA, Marietta looked genuinely remorseful, her face still bearing the sneak hex that Hermione's spell had left as a permanent reminder. "We wanted to apologize," Penelope said, speaking for the group. "For ever doubting you, for believing Umbridge's lies, for not standing with you from the beginning." Harry was taken aback by the sincerity in her voice. "You don't need to apologize. We all make mistakes, especially when we're scared. But we've seen what you can do," Roger added. "What Hogwarts can do through you. And we want to help. Not just as DA members, but as, I don't know, Castle Guardians or something." Harry smiled at the clumsy but heartfelt offer. "I appreciate that. And I think Hogwarts appreciates it too." He placed his hand on the wall, feeling the castle's response, a subtle warmth, a sense of welcome and gratitude. "We'll start training tomorrow," he promised. "Learning to work with Hogwarts magic, not just our own. It's going to change everything about how we think about defensive magic." As the Ravenclaws departed, their faces alight with purpose, Harry felt a profound sense of hope settle over him. The road ahead would be difficult: Voldemort was still out there, the Ministry was still interfering, and countless challenges remained, but for the first time since Sirius had died, since Dumbledore had withdrawn from active leadership, Harry felt like he wasn't facing these challenges alone. He had his friends, his fellow students, and most importantly, he had Hogwarts itself, ancient, powerful, and now fully awakened to its own potential through their unprecedented bond. The castle had chosen its warden well, and together they would stand against whatever darkness threatened the light. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the enchanted ceiling of the great hall showing a perfect spring day. As students filed in for breakfast, they couldn't help but notice the changes that had already begun to manifest in their magical home. The house tables seemed to arrange themselves more efficiently, ensuring that every student had optimal space and comfort. The ceiling responded to the mood of the room, shifting from the promised sunshine to display encouraging messages in the clouds: "Have a good day. Remember to study. House elves appreciate kindness." Even the food seemed enhanced, with dishes arranging themselves on plates in aesthetically pleasing patterns and pumpkin juice glasses automatically refilling when they ran low. "It's like Hogwarts is trying to be the perfect school," Hermione observed, watching a plate of kippers arrange themselves into a smiley face before floating to a delighted first year. "Or like it's showing off for its new warden," Ron suggested with a grin. Harry, who had been quietly observing these changes through his bond with the castle, nodded. "A little of both, maybe. Hogwarts wants everyone to feel welcome and safe. That's always been its primary purpose." As if in agreement, the banners above each table fluttered, and for a moment, the Hogwarts crest shone with particular brilliance before returning to normal. Breakfast was interrupted by the arrival of owls carrying the morning mail. Among the usual letters and packages, Harry noticed something unusual: a formal-looking envelope addressed to him in elegant script. Curious, he opened it to find an invitation printed on heavy parchment: "Mr. Harry James Potter, we, the Board of Governors of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, hereby request your attendance at a special meeting to discuss matters of vital importance regarding the current security situation and your role as Warden of Hogwarts. The meeting will be held in the board room at 3 p.m. on this date. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Respectfully submitted, Lucius Malfoy, Chairman Board of Governors." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. An invitation from Malfoy, and on the very day when he needed to focus on training the DA members in castle-aligned magic. "What is it?" Hermione asked, noticing his troubled expression. "An invitation from the Board of Governors," Harry said, showing her the letter. "Lucius Malfoy specifically requested my attendance." Ron's eyebrows shot up. Malfoy's dad? That's not good, Harry. He's going to try something, I know it. Hermione was already thinking strategically. We can't ignore it, though. The board has authority over school matters, and if they're calling a special meeting about your role as warden, we need to be there to represent Hogwarts' interests. Harry nodded grimly. You're right. But I also can't cancel the training session with the DA. Why not send a representative, a dreamy voice suggested, and they turned to find Luna Lovegood standing behind them, helping herself to a piece of toast. Someone who understands the bond between you and Hogwarts, but who can also handle political maneuvering. Draco, Harry realized immediately. He knows the board's workings, and he's been helpful so far. Luna nodded approvingly. The Nargles think that's an excellent idea. He has hidden depths, you know. Like a magical pond that looks shallow but is actually quite deep. Harry smiled at her unique way of expressing support. All right, I'll ask Draco to represent me at the board meeting. But I still don't like the timing. Send a message through the castle, Hermione suggested. If Hogwarts can deliver your breakfast to the right plate, it can certainly ensure that your message reaches Draco promptly. Harry closed his eyes, reaching out through his bond to the castle. Find Draco Malfoy, he thought, focusing on the intent. Tell him I need him to represent me at the board meeting today at 3. It's important. Almost immediately, he felt a response, not words, but a sense of acknowledgement and purpose. The castle would ensure that Draco received the message, one way or another. As they finished breakfast and prepared for their first classes, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that the board meeting was a distraction from something more important. Why would Malfoy call such a meeting now, when the security situation was still so volatile? What was his real motive? Harry, are you listening? He blinked, realizing Hermione had been trying to get his attention. Sorry, I was just thinking about the board meeting. Well, stop thinking and start listening, she said, exasperated but fond. We've got Transfiguration first, and you know how Professor McGonagall gets when students daydream in her class. They gathered their books and headed toward the classroom, but Harry's mind remained preoccupied. Through his bond with Hogwarts, he could sense the castle's own concern, not just about the board meeting, but about something deeper, something the stones themselves seemed to be anticipating with a mixture of dread and determination. What is it? Harry whispered to the castle as they climbed a staircase. What are you worried about? The response was immediate but enigmatic. A vision flashed through his mind of the lake, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the castle like a mirror. But beneath the surface, something moved. Something ancient and powerful that had been sleeping for centuries. And it was beginning to wake up. The day passed in a blur of classes and preparations. Harry found it increasingly difficult to focus on ordinary lessons when his connection to Hogwarts was constantly pulling at his attention, showing him glimpses of the castle's deeper magic, its hidden histories, its untapped potential. During a particularly boring history of magic lecture, which he attended via recording charm so he could be present while technically listening, Harry closed his eyes and let his consciousness expand through the bond. He found himself standing in the same chamber where he'd first discovered the Founder's Codex, but now the room was different, larger, more elaborate, filled with floating orbs of light that represented different aspects of Hogwarts magic. The Codex itself floated in the center, its pages turning rapidly as if searching for something. As Harry watched, mesmerized, words began to appear on the blank pages, not ink, but light, forming sentences that glowed with golden radiance. The Warden serves as bridge and guardian, voice and shield for ancient power. When darkness rises from the deep, the castle wakes, its chosen keeper. Harry realized he was reading a prophecy, or perhaps a promise, written not by any founder but by Hogwarts itself. The words spoke of his role not just as protector but as mediator between the castle's magic and the needs of the present day. As he absorbed the meaning, the vision shifted, showing him the lake once more. But now he could see beneath the surface clearly, enormous serpentine shapes moving in the depths, their scales glinting with magical energy. Mere people swam alongside them, their expressions reverent rather than fearful. "These are the guardians of the deep," a voice spoke, and Harry realized it was the castle itself communicating with him directly. "Protectors of Hogwarts' oldest secrets, keepers of the Foundation magic that predates even the founders." Harry's mind reeled. There were creatures in the lake more ancient than Hogwarts itself. Beings that had watched over the castle's magical foundation for centuries, waiting for a warden who could truly understand their role. "Why are you showing me this now?" Harry asked, though he wasn't sure if he was speaking aloud or just thinking the question. "Because the time of awakening has come," the castle replied, its voice resonating through every stone of the ancient building. "The corruption that threatened my wards has stirred other powers from their slumber. Powers that must be acknowledged, understood, and if necessary, confronted." The vision faded, and Harry found himself back in the history of magic classroom, Bin's droning voice continuing unabated. But everything had changed. He now understood that his role as warden extended beyond protecting Hogwarts from external threats. He was also responsible for maintaining the delicate balance between the castle's various magical guardians, both seen and unseen. "Harry, are you all right?" He blinked, realizing that class had ended and Hermione was shaking his shoulder gently. "You were completely unresponsive for the entire lecture. I couldn't even get you to blink." "I'm fine," Harry assured her, gathering his books. "I was just communicating with Hogwarts." Hermione's eyebrows rose. "Communicating how?" Harry hesitated, then decided she deserved to know the full extent of what he was experiencing. "The castle is showing me things, Hermione. Ancient secrets, hidden guardians, magical truths that go back centuries. It's like the castle is finally sharing its memories with me." Hermione's expression shifted from concern to fascination. "That's incredible, Harry. Do you realize what this means? Access to 1,000 years of magical knowledge, directly from the source." "It's overwhelming," Harry admitted. "And a little scary. I'm not sure I'm ready for all these revelations." "None of us are ever truly ready for the truth," Luna's dreamy voice interjected as she appeared beside them. "But the truth is patient. It waits until we're strong enough to handle it, then reveals itself in its own time." Harry smiled at her wisdom. "You make it sound so simple." Luna shrugged. "The Nargles say that truth, like water, finds its own level. You can't force it, but you can prepare yourself to receive it." As they continued toward their next class, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that the revelations about the lake's ancient guardians were connected to the board meeting Lucius Malfoy had called. Why else would the castle choose this particular moment to reveal such significant information? By the time afternoon arrived, Harry was a bundle of nerves and anticipation. The DA members had been informed about the special training session he would be leading after the board meeting, and their excitement was palpable throughout the castle. But the political implications of Malfoy's summons weighed heavily on his mind. "I'll go represent you at the meeting," Draco said when Harry found him in the library, pretending to study. "But I want something in return." Harry raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "Information," Draco replied bluntly. "About what's really happening with Hogwarts magic. My father thinks it's some kind of dark power you've tapped into. I know better, but I need to understand the truth." "Fair enough," Harry agreed. "But remember, this information goes no further than us. The fewer people who know about the full extent of my bond with Hogwarts, the safer everyone will be." Draco nodded, his expression unusually serious. "I understand. Slytherin self-preservation, remember?" As they made their way toward the board room, Harry couldn't help but notice how the castle seemed to be watching this meeting with particular interest. Portraits turned in their frames to observe Draco's progress, and the stones beneath their feet felt warmer than usual, as if Hogwarts itself was curious about this unexpected alliance. The board room was located in a part of the castle that few students ever visited, a corridor lined with portraits of former headmasters and headmistresses, their painted eyes following visitors with unsettling intensity. The heavy oak door bore the Hogwarts crest and was protected by ancient wards that recognized Draco's authority as a board member's son. Ready? Draco asked, his hand on the door handle. Harry nodded, reaching out through his bond to feel the castle's support. Ready as I'll ever be. Draco pushed open the door, and they entered together to face whatever political maneuvering Lucius Malfoy had planned. The board room was a circular chamber with tall windows overlooking the lake. The Hogwarts Board of Governors was seated around a large table, all 12 members, including Lucius Malfoy in his position as chairman. They looked up as Harry and Draco entered, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. "Ah, Mr. Potter," Lucius said smoothly, rising to his feet. "And Mr. Malfoy. How unexpected." "I'm here to represent Mr. Potter," Draco said before Harry could speak. "He has prior commitments that prevent his attendance, but he authorized me to speak on his behalf regarding matters of Hogwarts security and his role as warden." Lucius's eyes narrowed slightly, but he gestured for them to be seated. "Very well. Let us proceed with this unconventional arrangement." As they took their places at the table, Harry reached out through his bond with Hogwarts, asking the castle to monitor the proceedings and alert him to any magical manipulation or hidden agendas. The meeting began with formalities, reports on school finances, updates on staff contracts, routine administrative matters. But Harry could sense the tension building, could feel the castle's growing unease as it became clear that Malfoy had called this special meeting for a specific purpose. Finally, Lucius cleared his throat and leaned forward, his cold eyes fixed on Draco. "Now, let us discuss the matter that truly concerns us, the situation regarding Mr. Potter's claim to be the Warden of Hogwarts." The other board members leaned forward, their attention fully captured. Harry felt a surge of protective anger through his bond with the castle, but he forced himself to remain calm, to let Draco handle this initial confrontation. "My father," Draco began carefully, "believes that Mr. Potter's connection to Hogwarts represents a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a single individual. He's concerned about the implications for school governance and student safety." Lucius nodded approvingly. "Well said, Draco. The board must consider whether Mr. Potter's claim has any legitimate basis in magical law or historical precedent." "Actually," Harry said, speaking for the first time, "it has plenty of basis in both." The board members turned to him in surprise, having forgotten he was present. Harry continued, drawing on the knowledge the castle had shared with him. "The position of Warden dates back to the founding of Hogwarts itself. According to the original charter, signed by Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, Helga Hufflepuff, and Salazar Slytherin, the castle may choose a warden in times of great need, someone who can serve as a bridge between Hogwarts magic and the human stewards of the school." He gestured to the documents spread across the table. "Those are copies of the original founding documents. I can show you the relevant passages if you'd like." Lucius's composure cracked for just a moment, surprise flickering across his features before his mask of control returned. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Potter. We are aware of the historical references to wardens. Are you aware," Harry continued, "that the last recorded warden served during Grindelwald's rise to power? Eldritch Diggory protected Hogwarts from dark forces seeking to corrupt its ancient magic. The position isn't symbolic, it's a vital part of Hogwarts' defensive structure." One of the other board members, an elderly witch with a stern expression, leaned forward. "And you claim that Hogwarts itself chose you for this role?" Harry nodded. "Yes. The bond formed naturally, in response to a threat against the castle's wards. I didn't seek it out, Hogwarts came to me." "And how exactly did this bond form?" Lucius asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. "What specific magical process was involved?" Harry could sense the castle's hesitation through their bond. This was dangerous territory, revealing too much about the nature of the connection could expose vulnerabilities that enemies might exploit. "I'm afraid that's protected information," Harry said carefully. "The bond between a warden and Hogwarts is sacred, known only to those directly involved." Lucius's eyes narrowed. "Sacred, you say? Or simply secret? What are you hiding, Mr. Potter?" Harry met his gaze steadily. I'm hiding nothing. But I am protecting something, the ancient magic of Hogwarts itself. Some knowledge is too powerful to be shared lightly, especially with those who might use it for the wrong purposes. The temperature in the room seemed to drop at his words, and Harry realized he'd struck a nerve. Lucius Malfoy's involvement with dark forces was an open secret, and Harry had just implied that he might be one of those wrong purposes people. I think we've heard enough, the elderly witch declared, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. The historical precedent is clear, and Mr. Potter's claim appears legitimate. The question before us is not whether he is the warden, but what that means for the board's authority. Lucius looked furious at this interruption to his interrogation, but he couldn't argue with the logic. Very well. What exactly are the powers and responsibilities of this warden position? Harry took a deep breath, knowing this was the crucial moment. The warden serves as Hogwarts' primary protector, its voice in matters concerning its welfare, and its bridge to the human magical community. In practical terms, this means I have authority over the castle's defensive magic, access to its most sacred secrets, and responsibility for maintaining the balance between Hogwarts' ancient power and the needs of its current inhabitants. He paused, letting that sink in. But it also means I'm accountable to the castle itself first and foremost. My loyalty is to Hogwarts, not to any individual, organization, or government. That statement hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone in the room. Harry was claiming a higher authority than the ministry, higher even than the Board of Governors. His first loyalty was to Hogwarts itself. Lucius recovered quickly, his political instincts kicking in. A noble sentiment, Mr. Potter. But what happens when the interests of Hogwarts conflict with the interests of the wizarding world at large? Who resolves such conflicts? The Warden and the Board work together to find solutions that honor both Hogwarts' autonomy and its role in the larger magical community, Harry said, sticking to the diplomatic answer. That's why meetings like this are important, to ensure clear communication and mutual understanding. The elderly witch nodded approvingly. A reasonable approach. Perhaps we should formalize the relationship between the Warden and the Board, establishing clear protocols for cooperation and conflict resolution. Lucius looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant, but he couldn't argue against formalizing the arrangement. I suppose that could be arranged, he said through gritted teeth. But I would like to propose some additional safeguards, Lucius, the elderly witch interrupted. I think we've heard enough for today. Mr. Potter's status as warden is established, both historically and practically. The matter of formalizing our working relationship is important, but it can be handled through normal board procedures. She turned to Harry with unexpected warmth. Welcome to your new role, Mr. Potter. I believe Hogwarts has chosen wisely. As the meeting concluded and the board members began to file out, Harry felt a wave of relief wash over him. The castle's presence in his mind seemed to sigh with satisfaction, the immediate threat had been deflected, and the legitimacy of his position as warden had been acknowledged, even by Malfoy. But as Lucius passed him on his way out, the end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.